At 10 years.
It's 7.
I love
We're
it.
good to go.
It's kind of a Nancy right of
Use your
order.
gravel. Use your gavel. Your gravel.
Are we all set now? Are we rolling?
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. This is 7 o'clock approximately, and it is Monday, October 16th, 2023. We are in the board room of the municipal building in downtown Hanover, where we're going to do good work for the town and have fun. Just a review of the agenda. We have, there'll be there's going to be a short session of, there's public comment, and then we're going to move into the majority of the meeting we've devoted to the Mink Brook Community Forest housing project, and I believe that's what most folks in the audience are here in attendance for, and I'll discuss how we're going to do that when we get to that agenda item, which will be very shortly. And then we have in our business requiring action, we have a couple of important items that we're going over. Ellen's here, right?
She's like way
there.
back.
She is, way in the back. Our finance director is way in the back. But we will need her shortly. At the when we get to that portion of the meeting. So, moving down to agenda item, we've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're down to agenda item number 5. See, at this rate, we'll be done by 7:10. I don't think that's going to happen. So public comment is a portion of the meeting where we just like to receive comments from folks in the community on agenda. We ask that this be limited to items not on the agenda. And we do ask, just for the sake of time and expedience, that we keep comments down to 5 minutes, and if there are questions, they're addressed to the chair, and we will see where we go from there. Is there anyone who would like to speak under public comment? Please, and if you could just come up and identify yourself, and if you could come up to the microphone. Yes.
Hi, my name is Petra McGillen. I'm a resident of the Dunster Drive neighborhood, and I'm here to talk about the crosswalk at Dunster Drive across South Main Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this meeting and to be part of the good work and the fun. Thank you also for looking into the crosswalk at Dunster across South Main Street. I really appreciate that our neighborhood has your attention on this important matter. It's been a long journey. Our neighborhood has been asking the town for over a year now to have the crosswalk installed. And we started with a letter to the town manager, and on which we collected 44 signatures from our neighbors. And the Bike Walk Committee issued a strong letter of support for this crosswalk. The Select Board voiced its unanimous support. The Safety Committee said this summer that a crosswalk could be installed if we meet the threshold with the pedestrian count. And a count was conducted recently. The data is in, and the data clearly demonstrates our neighborhood's urgent need for a crosswalk. So the Regional Planning Committee noted that there should be a crosswalk because the peak hours of the count were in the late afternoon and early evening, which was also at peak traffic, and it's getting dark, days are getting shorter. I think it's a great opportunity to put this crosswalk in. And we've checked all the boxes of the town's criteria, and so my fellow Dunster Drive residents and I would like to know when the crosswalk will be installed. We'd like to know what's our timeline, and we'd also like to emphasize that you have an opportunity here to make a real difference in the safety and the quality of life of a whole neighborhood here. So, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I don't have a timeline, but the town is committed to putting that in. I don't know if we have any further information on that, Alex. I would suspect we don't have any further
Yeah, I don't have a
information.
specific date yet, but we will soon, shortly.
Yeah.
Rob just raised it.
Rob! I couldn't find you.
So South Main Street is a state highway, and the next step is actually to make the request to the New Hampshire Department of Transportation formally. That's in the works. The options for them are to approve or reject and place the burden on the town. So if they approve it, they'll fund it. If they reject it, we will fund it.
Right.
So it will go in, but there is a step that we still need to take, which is formal request and approval or by the state. I don't want to skip that process.
And I think we've got everything we need to do that.
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Rob. I forgot that detail. That's an important detail. Thank you very much.
And the request is already in the works, did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
I'm just getting ready because my 8-year-old is gonna pepper me with questions tonight when I come home, so.
It is in the
Probably
works.
won't be
Okay.
done this fall.
Wonderful. And an update on the timeline would be terrific as soon as you have news, because it is talk of the neighborhood and.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think, we're not talking this year, unfortunately. Most construction,
I'd be surprised. Yeah, I mean, I think we're
Well-
getting past the.
It's also paint won't dry,
right.
but I don't know.
Yeah, we can get more information for the next meeting for sure.
Okay.
Is there a contact for the dumpster neighborhood in the letter that we can?
Yes,
Okay.
it's my husband, Michael McGillen, and me.
Yeah.
We will email you.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to, yes? Is that Alice?
Sim.
Good evening, my name is Ian Sim, I live at the North neighbourhood. My question this evening is about what progress is being made in installing high-speed internet in the various parts of the town which are not served. Living in the North neighbourhood, tantalisingly close to Lime and their Lime fibre. The last I heard about what progress was being made was the previous town manager had announced, just I think before she retired, that she had secured funding to do a pole survey, which I believe is an important and necessary step before going any further. So I just wondered what's happened in the past year and a half that you could update us on.
I don't have any information for you. Alex, do you have?
I do. I can give you a little. I don't have it all right in front of me, but basically, there is our IT director here in Hanover is working with some of the ISPs. So we've talked to Hub 66, Comcast, and Lime Fiber, and there's two different sort of needs in the north end of town. One is there's a couple areas where, for whatever reason, I certainly can't explain it. You have Comcast service that comes in and there's 2 or 3 houses where they aren't served, and they're served in one direction and they're served in the other direction. So that's sort of one set of needs, and there's maybe 3 or 4 spots that are that. And then there is a larger need that we're more following up with Lime Fiber about right now. And so they are pursuing grant funding on this sort of I don't know if it's on the town's behalf is the right way to say it, but they're pursuing grant funding that we would be able to use to continue to build out internet in that part of town. So we don't know yet how much that's going to get and how far we're going to get, but there is a round of funding that's available, either closed last week or this week, and then there's going to be a second round next year as well. So if we don't get what we need this year, the hope is that we would get it next year. So we are moving forward on that. And our IT director is part of a regional group of ISPs and town officials that have built out that survey and are working to figure out how to close the gap.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fine.
So
yes, to say some of us are tantalisingly close to Lime. I mean, 600 feet away.
yeah, you can see the
You can almost see the fibre optic
Right.
there. I'm sort of going out at night and just.
Well, no comment.
Thank you very much for the update.
Yeah.
Quick question. ARPA monies could possibly be used for this project?
That's not something that we're planning on proposing right now in the budget process. We are looking at closing a gap with people that, with ARPA money, where we might provide grant funding to help secure like cell phone antenna boosters. So if you don't have internet service, you could get better mobile internet service. But when we look at the projects that we're planning on bringing here in the next month, are a little bit of a higher impact per dollar. You'd only be able to get a couple houses basically with the ARPA money that we have.
I see.
And so we're looking at projects that have a little bit of a larger, a broader community impact, more residents.
I see.
Excuse me. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak during public comment? David?
My name's David Vincelet. I live at 93 Lebanon Street, Hanover. First, I'd just like to say a prayer for Israel. They may be under the protection of Almighty God for what's happened to them. I'm a retired Army officer. I have a sworn duty to defend the Constitution. For the last 18 years, I've been trying to expose and stop illegal waste dumping in town waters. I was here last week trying to make headway on getting on the agenda. And I asked Mr. Rassius if Alex has responsibility to return phone calls. I've been calling him, I thought it was 15 months, but it turns out it's 16 months. Calling him for 16 months, he has failed to return a phone call. I'm trying to understand how my First Amendment rights are being honored.
David, can I interrupt you for 2 seconds? With regard to talking to Alex, I've spoken with Alex, and you have to understand that we previously, it's not up to Alex. We the board have.
He's not allowed to talk.
Just 1 second. Let me finish. Have asked him to hold off, but with the development, with moving forward in time, I think the best thing to do would be to have a conversation with Alex and hopefully with myself as well. We'll see.
We're having a conversation with you right now.
But I think you're asking for more time one-on-one is what you've been asking for.
No, I'd just like him to answer questions. Here at this board, you don't allow me to ask him any questions. I was stopped from asking questions and you had me arrested.
I was under the understanding that you wanted to meet with him and discuss issues. That is
Well, I
not.
wanted to talk to him. I don't have to meet with him, but I need to talk to him.
Okay. Okay, and that's what we're setting up. I've asked Alex to go ahead and set that up with you.
Oh, good. It's about time. Does he have my phone number?
I believe we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I've also been calling the college since they've turned over a new administration. Emma Wolf has been assigned as the Vice President of Community and Government Engagement. So I've been calling her office for 2 months, but she won't return my calls either. So I invited her here to see community government engagement at the select board in action. I don't know whether she came or not. I also asked you at the last meeting whether you were ready to apologize for holding my family for 25.5 months in a concentration camp without water, electric, our rental income, firewood, or food. And I don't know whether the town's ready to apologize for that.
I'm not going to respond to that.
I'm not going to respond. Okay. When will the town apologize to the women in my family who have been abused? The town has demonized me for standing up against crime in town government. The 13 officials who knew both that the town was dumping poison in the water and that people were being held in a restrained on property with a fence blocking our driveway and fire lane.
I'm going to hold off on responding.
I mean, I know I may not be a sympathetic figure, but I have to protect my 4 daughters and my wife who've been abused by this board and by 13 town officials. It's about time that something gets on the agenda to do an investigation of what this town has done.
We've heard your message over time, David.
Yeah, you don't respond. The state constitution says that the citizens have a duty or the right to get redress from the town officers, and that the town officers are supposed to be responsive, but you're not responsive. You haven't responded. For the last 6 years, you failed to answer questions. Longer than that, but that's what I've been able to just to see in the videotapes of the past sessions. Y'all don't think you have to respond. You think you're above the law. You're criminals. Nancy Carter, Athos Rassius, and Joanna Whitcomb. You've all committed crimes. And you sit there and don't think you have to answer questions. Polluted Mink Brook, polluted human beings, and then abused them. All these people here who are for Mink Brook community don't know that the brook was purposely polluted and that the Conservation Commission and the Hanover Conservancy knew about it and didn't want to do anything about it and allowed it to go on for 20 years.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak under public comment? This is for items not on the agenda. Great. So we will move forward. Let me just make an X. So as I said earlier, the bulk of our time at this meeting and the times that we have listed on the agenda are really just to kind of remind us that time is important, but they're arbitrary. So we'll take as long as we need. And moving to the Mink Brook Community Workforce Housing Project, the Select Board is really interested in doing is hearing from interested and citizens in the community. And we thought the best way to address this would be first to go through a project history and an overview presentation that Rob Hausman will be giving shortly. And then he'll also be discussing the Conservation Commission's Mink Brook Forest Management Plan, which is quite thorough. And then we'll just open it up to listening and to solicit items for discussion and priorities for the Select Board's consideration of negotiated terms with Twin Pines. Rob's going to go through some of the actual the structure of this in just a few minutes, but I'd like to say that we are still in closed door negotiations with the parties involved, and as such we are not at liberty to give a whole lot of back and forth. Fortunately, we have with us today our counsel, Joe Driscoll, if you could raise your hand. Thank you, Mr. Driscoll, who can provide really the expertise that I am lacking with regards to what we can talk about and what we can't talk about. And thank you very much for being here tonight, Joe.
Thank you.
Rob, would you like to take over?
Be happy to. So, thank you. My name is Rob Hausman. For those who don't know me, I am the Director of Planning, Zoning, and Codes for the town of Hanover. And hopefully this works.
Should we lower the lights on this side? Do you think that helps or not help? It does not help.
It will help.
I'm just saying that there's people.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of folks who
corner.
can't see the slides.
Come over here and sit up here with us. Barbara,
There's a
come
lot
on
of
up.
Seats over here, the seats at the...
There's seats next to Alan and Joe and. This isn't a sacred land. Come on up.
We get a screen that tilts next time.
Yeah, we could. That would be
Yeah.
very helpful. Maybe just get one of those big ratchets.
There's a.
In my mind, there should be a screen there.
That's a good point.
Back there.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to give everybody VR headsets when they come in.
Yeah, this was pretty cool technology when it came out, but it's kind of old.
Can everyone see the deck? Okay.
And please let me know if you can't hear me. I will speak up or rearrange my body in a way that I can see.
Maybe
the
you should-
audience.
Maybe you should speak.
Yeah, maybe
together.
Rob, can you?
That's a good suggestion.
We've all seen this through our packet.
I can see if I can do it without the computer in front of me. So we have two presentations tonight. One is an overview. We have two new board members, and we're several years removed from the development of the Mink Brook Community Forest and Management Plan. So I'd like to go through that fairly quickly and answer any questions you may have on it, and then jump into the second part, which is the workforce housing component. So I just want to orient everyone. The parcel in red, the two parcels in red are what is known as the Mink Brook Community Forest. Mink Brook Community Meadows about here, the water towers here, and The forest that was harvested is up in this area. For frame of reference, most of the green area is either conserved land, publicly owned, privately owned conserved land, easement land, or open space. So you can see the Appalachian Trail corridor here, the Hudson Farm, the open space for, just drew a blank. Barrel Farms,
Barrel
thank
Farms,
you.
nice.
Farfield, the Velvet Rocks easement that's held by the Conservancy. So you could, the connectivity of these parcels is really important. So I want to talk about the management responsibilities. This property is overseen by the Hanover Conservation Commission based on the statutory funding sources. The Hanover Conservation Commission had $300,000 plus in the pool here, and that money encumbered the funds in such a way that it is conserved land managed by the Conservation Commission. That's not the only funding source that was used. There was grant funds from the U.S. Forest Service, New Hampshire LCHIP funds, and then there were private funds and Brissett funds that were used. And TPL. And
No.
no, TPL just was our agent. There was no, we paid them. Thank you. So, did I skip the timeline? Oh.
Yes.
I apologize. So this timeline starts July 2020, which is town meeting and vote. I should wind it back about a decade plus. Paragon had a purchase and sales agreement on this property. They were proposing 300 plus housing units and a continuing care facility, and litigation ensued. They had a right to purchase this property that they wouldn't relinquish. That right was extinguished, and the Levitts went out on the open market, at which time Trust for Public Lands was brought in. The Conservancy and the town and the Trust for Public Lands worked cooperatively to try to acquire this property. And in the July 2020 vote, over 1,000 people participated and voted in to acquire the property. September 2020, we kicked off some site tours of the property. 40 people participated in the tours, hikes, both on the north side and the south side. We also began the public input session for the Conservation Commission to develop the plan starting in September through December. The people who participated by Zoom, we were in the middle of COVID, are there. 40 the first meeting, 23 the second, 24 the fourth, and 40 the third. We did an online survey. We had 147 participants on the survey. The Conservation Commission in January 2021 was wrapping up the plan. We had 2 people participate. And in February 2021, the plan was voted on and adopted, with 12 people in the community participating in the virtual meeting. This was an unusual time for all of us. We didn't ever meet in person. And we were able to acquire this parcel and develop a very comprehensive management plan through the Conservation Commission. I should point out that Whit Spalding is the chair of the Conservation Commission now. John Donnelly, Donovan, thank you. I'm running on fumes, so bear with me. Is also on the Conservation Commission. Whit participated from start to finish, and others in the audience also. This management plan really is designed to maintain the ecological integrity and health of the forest and the open lands, and maintain public access for the property for recreation and education. Yeah, that's critical to the plan. The plan includes a comprehensive description and natural resource assessment. It includes a framework for policy decisions on ongoing management activities. It fulfills the grant requirements. This property is encumbered by 3 different grants that impose certain restrictions. The U.S. Forest Service requires it to be an actively managed forest. The LCHIP funds require it to be open and available for a range of uses, including hunting and fishing. And the Connecticut Rivers Mitigation and Enhancement Fund have other encumbrances on the Mink Brook corridor itself. So this plan is developed to comply with those restrictions. It also is to comply with the broader objectives of the Hanover Conservation Commission and the community. It emphasizes adaptability based on changes in forest conditions, and it addresses the community goals for timber management, stewardship of the non-forest areas, invasive plant control, wildlife habitat, recreation, ecological protection. So timber, I know that there's some interest in whether this will be timbered again. Timber management is a requirement of the U.S. Forest Service. It may be a very selective cut or an education demonstration cut, but it is a requirement, and it may not occur for 30 to 50 years. It's dividing the north parcel into 5 areas. There's timber cruises, aerial photographs, and topographic layers added to this so that we didn't put any timber activities in high-risk areas or high-value wildlife areas. We mapped invasives, and when I say we, the Conservation Commission primarily did all the mapping, such as glossy buckthorn, Japanese knotweed, as they pose a threat and require control strategies. And then wildlife. This property has a high value for wildlife, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 habitat, according to the New Hampshire Wildlife Action Plan. Tier 1, regional importance, Tier 2, local importance, and Tier 3, supportive. So they're high value, and most of and you'll see on the map where those are in general. The forest itself is free of disease, and it's a naturally functioning forest ecology. There is a risk with the emerald ash borer is an ongoing concern. And it's just a note that I put there. The other issue that's out there with impacting our forest management is deer browse. The high density of deer is browsing the seedlings and allowing for glossy buckthorn and other invasives to take root. And the management decision focuses on improving and maintaining the habitat and preventing forest fragmentation. Thank you.
Doing great, Rob.
So for recreation and trail management, the recommendations were based on the open space plan of 2020 as revised in a draft of the plan that we're working to update in 2019. The development of the trail system is designed to be low impact on the resources, provide universal access where possible, add information and signage for education, and provide education and stewardship opportunities through Conservation Commission, local schools, and adult learning programs. Conservation Commission has been hosting workshops out there. The Hanover Conservancy has been hosting workshops out there. It's an excellent resource. It's an opportunity for the entire community to learn about this asset. More importantly, it would be ideal to have the college to use this as a base level benchmark to monitor change over time. Wildlife and habitat, ongoing assessment of the impact of deer browse. I mentioned, deer browse is an issue that's plaguing us everywhere, but it's also plaguing us in the timber harvest area, preventing the natural species to get established and allowing for invasives to take over. Enhance forest species diversity, so we don't have monocultures. Some of the suggestions is test plots to see if we can create some, I think the term was used as help me out here with the arboretum, where we could do a 40 to 50 native species planting and use them as educational outreach components. And maintain the Mink meadow for pollinators and upland birds with only rotational mowing. We're in our third year of that rotational mowing. For those who've been by, you'll notice that the middle of the meadow has been mowed. Last year was the Brook side, and then the previous year was the road side. That rotational mowing is going to be continued, maybe modified over time based on the recommendations of our ecologists and the Conservation Commission. But the goal is pollinators and upland bird habitat. Harvesting will be limited only, logging will be limited to only 82 acres, approximately 1/3 the property. The forestry inventory resulted contained within the report are the foundation of the community forest management plan, and it'll be used to inform us on timber harvest and wildlife and habitat preservation and ecological considerations. Education and outreach, one of the things that the Conservation Commission, when we developed this plan, considered was an open air classroom, something like a pavilion, and that pavilion being a place where you could host a classroom on a regular basis, be it middle school, elementary school, high school, college, or adult learning. And the opportunities are in the works. The Conservation Commission will be making those decisions and seeing how we move forward as to how we can grow the education and outreach components. The other element that we can do here is actually stewardship opportunities for community members, whether it's high school, middle school, college, or adults, and work with the Conservation Commission to learn to identify invasive, remove invasives, and really check out this property in great detail. So this map, while it's I thought would be better, but this is the upper parcel. You can see these white areas in here. That's the representation of that's the cut. That's where the harvest areas were. This white area is actually what's referred to as a fen. It's a high value functional wetlands and aging out bog that's filling in. It's a very unique feature that is part of the headwaters of the Lombard Brook that runs this way. And then the meadow area here, as you can see, we've maintained that meadow now. The map, this is for all practical purposes the management plan. Everything in green is high value. The Lombard Brook, the fen that I referred to, the area that's highly ecologically sensitive on the height of land on the backside toward in this area. The area highlighted in pink, which is hard to see, which is, I'm going to describe it, it's actually the limits of the timber harvest. And then these pink circles are actually the mapped invasives that have been identified. The mapped invasives down on Mink Brook are primarily Japanese knotweed. The mapped invasives on the north parcel is glossy buckthorn for the most part. Conclusion, the management plan of Mink Brook Community Forest will be in accordance with the following: the community objectives defined during the planning process, the goals of the Hanover Conservation Commission, the requirements of the funders, legal requirements in the warranty deed and the conservation restrictions, best management practices for forestry management, trail development, and the protection of water resources, professional experience and ethical responsibilities of licensed forester, guiding its management, any application of local, state, and federal laws, and the guidance of the recommendations in this plan. And with that, I open it to questions. It is a comprehensive plan. It's 100+ pages. It's almost 200 pages long. The appendix make it much longer. It's available on our website. I would encourage anybody and everyone to take a look at it. It's very informative. Questions?
There's one in the back.
Yes.
Just one quick question about the timber harvesting.
Excuse me, sir. Could you,
Sorry,
no, could you, would you please come up? And it's, I'm sure there are folks watching on CATV, and this will be recorded, which is why
Sure.
we just need
Where's
to.
the CATV camera?
They're
One
right there,
there,
right there,
one
and
there,
one behind
one there.
over there.
My name is Rich Greger. I am a resident of Hanover. I currently serve on the Hanover Finance Committee, and I'm also an owner of Guile Hill condo there. I state that now because later on I do have some comments to make, but more pertinent for now. I did have a quick question about the timber. If there is any timber harvesting, what does that happens to the revenues from that?
By statute, the revenues go to the Conservation Commission to be
Okay.
reinvested in
Okay.
conservation projects.
That was my only question.
Thank you.
It will be many years before any timber harvesting occurs.
All right, so we'll move on, Rob, to your second presentation. Please.
Oh, so-
This is more challenging than I thought, working away from the computer.
Do you want to get the link?
I'll get on it again.
Part two. So, the project that I just spoke about was a multi-pronged project that included the creation of 2 parcels for conservation purposes, the carving off of the old Levitt farmhouse for sale to a private owner, the carving off of a 0.2 acre parcel for the future expansion of a water tank, and the carving off of what is approximately, what is now known to be 5 acres for workforce housing. So those were all of the elements of the actions the town took on this project. This one focuses on this little outholding right here. So again, orienting everybody, the pink is the Mink Brook Community Forest. There is a square right about there that's designed to be the water tower location. And I'll move to the next. So the open space, the parcel that we just talked about, the Mink Brook Community Forest, it's a key parcel in the Greenbelt, Hanover Greenbelt. It's a confirmed wildlife corridor. It has connectivity to the Appalachian Trail and other local trails. It has access to nature for over 30,000 people within 3 miles of this property. 30,000 being those who live or work within 3 miles of this property. It establishes flood resilience and water quality for Mink Brook by buffering Mink Brook from development. And it's working lands, forestry and agriculture, meaning we're mowing the field for pollinators and upland birds, and the forestry would be managed for potential for diverse forests, wildlife habitat, and ultimately forest production at some scale. The housing, access to municipal sewer and water, 2 miles commute to downtown, Dartmouth College and Medical Center, paved road and an existing road cut, neighborhood of modest, I shouldn't be so blunt today, but this is my neighborhood, and I would call this neighborhood the most modest in Hanover, one of the most modest in Hanover, if that's fair to say. And the lot is level and has frontage. Again, the project structure, 254 acres to Mink Brook community, 5 acres for future workforce housing, 0.27 for a water tank replacement, and 1 acre for the lot was sold to a private buyer. And I apologize, I don't have my right glasses on. Thank you for your patience. So I want to touch base on First, the number one here is recent affordable housing projects in Hanover have been done by the town of Hanover donating land. That's what's made it viable. What I mean, the two projects that come to mind is Guile Hill and Summer Park. The town of Hanover owned both parcels, donated them to the developer. I should point out that Guile Hill didn't go as smoothly as we hoped, and ultimately Twin Pines came in and finished the project. They were not the original developer. Summer Park, we donated the land, we did site improvements, including sewer and water extension, and that's what made that project viable. The Trust for Public Lands paid fair market value for the forest and resold the house, enabling it to donate the 5 acres encumbered by the restriction for workforce housing to the town. At that time, the appraisal was for that property said it was worth $265,000. Understanding it's encumbered and restricted to only workforce housing. The deed requires the 5 acres to be transferred to a nonprofit for development as workforce housing, and the town has recently approved a workforce housing overlay district amendment. What is workforce housing? Housing is the workforce housing in Hanover is defined as housing affordable for rent or purchase solely by the households whose income are less than 120% of the gross of the area median income for Grafton County. That may include single-family, duplex dwellings, and multifamily. The area median income for Grafton County for a family of 4, and that's the important thing to realize, or a household of 4, is $115,000. So moving on to what regulations would apply to any development of this property. It's our zoning, it's our site plan review regulations, our subdivision regulations, or site plan review and site plan review regulations. It's New Hampshire DES standards, primarily focused on alteration of terrain. Also wetlands standards may come into play, and New Hampshire DOT driveway permit. So stepping through our zoning, applying the overlay district as it exists today, not more than 29 units could be built on this property. That is 7,500 square foot of land per unit. Must comply with all the setbacks. That's property line and wetlands. Stormwater management must be treated to achieve 80% removal of suspended solids and at least 50% removal of nitrogen and phosphorus. The reduction in the peak rate of stormwater discharge cannot exceed the pre-development rate for the 2-year, 10-year, 25-year, 24-hour storm event. So when this project is done, no additional peak discharge will run off the water, off the site than it currently runs off. That's the requirement by our site plan review regulations. New Hampshire alteration of terrain deals with construction, erosion, sediment control, stormwater management, and post-construction. They also mirror, our regs mirror theirs in this case, and that's mandatory given that they will disturb 100,000 square feet of topsoil or more. Basically, 2.5 acres will be disturbed. They'll punch in a road, create house sites, build those. If this project comes to fruition, and it will cause the disturbance of more than 2.5 acres. I should say 2.5 builders' acres officially, because it's an acre is a little larger, and requires a New Hampshire DOT driveway permit. Going backwards, I think. Yep. So Hanover median income and housing attainability. Townwide median income is $136,900. Owner's median income $204,000. Renter's median income $62,000. Huge disparity between owner and rental. It goes to the point of the need for workforce housing. Potential housing options, single unit, duplex, fourplex. Let's use for simple math, I'm gonna pick 20 units. 20 single units is 20 footprints, 20 duplexes is 10 footprints. 20 units is a fourplex is 5 units. So you could envision opportunity to create a community on this property as part of the Greensboro Road neighborhood that fits the scale of Greensboro Road without overwhelming it with development. The town staff hired a local architect to put pen to paper back in 2021, March 2021, and come up with concepts so that we had talking points if we were to start to bring this forward. The one on the left, the 14 units, is 2 duplexes. The balance is single units, carports to the rear, green in the front, community garden to the northeast. So you come in on the existing drive cut, trailhead parking would be here and here, access road to the parcel, the conserved land as a forestry management lane, an ultimate access point for future forestry activities if necessary is built into this. The concept here was, solar on the roofs of the carports and units. The concept on the left, on the right, never really, we didn't bring it out for discussion or debate. It was something that was in draft form, but this is 20 duplexes. Give you a sense of how options could be developed. And again, this is not what is required to be developed. This is what we conceptualized in March of 2021. So, next steps. We're here tonight to receive public comment on the transfer of the workforce housing parcel for development. Those comments will be considered by the selectmen as it works through the options agreement, the official term for something equivalent to a purchase and sales agreement. And it will be refined with the select board and the town council and town manager with the hopes that we can get that agreement signed to give Twin Pines the opportunity to perform their due diligence, seek funding to hire a design team, and get boots on the ground. They can't do anything until the options agreement is signed. The next step would be to, if the options agreement is signed, as one of the elements would be requiring 2 facilitated public workshops with Twin Pines to receive feedback on the design concepts. In addition, Twin Pines will need to finalize their design and seek special exception from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. That's a public hearing where the public can give testimony and site plan approval. Again, through the planning board, that's a public hearing where public testimony will be received. So there will be 2 workshops and at least 2 nights of public hearings, one with the zoning board, one with the planning board. Twin Pines will then close on the parcel only when the conditions of the options agreement are met. And the select board will be the decider on whether those options agreement will be met. That option agreement is critical to allow them to seek funding in addition to everything else. And that options agreement will run for 12 to 16 months. And if all goes well, at the conclusion of that, they've demonstrated compliance, they will begin construction in about a year to a year and a half. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to entertain questions.
Thank you, Rob. I think what we'll do is, thank you, Joanna. Turn the lights on.
I need a job.
I think you can mostly close up shop, Rob. We may need one or two of the maps later, but at this point, as I said a little bit earlier, we'd like to basically construct a listening session to hear what people say. We have had, I know there are folks I've been in contact with who weren't able to be here tonight. We did leave on our website a feedback form, which has been distributed to the board, and we've also received some direct letters to the board. So there's additional input that has been provided, which may or may not be reflected here as well. So the format I'd really like to stick to would be to, anyone can have a chance to talk, and for as long as they want to talk, direct questions, please to me, just so that we can maintain equilibrium, and I'm not going to be able to answer every question. There may be things that we actually cannot address as per our council, but we'll try and keep this open as possible. So it's mostly a listening session. Who would like to start this off?
Did you want to say something here?
Well, I just had can we ask questions also?
Sure.
Okay, so Rob,
No.
what is the nature of the special exception?
Yeah, thank you.
That's required.
Excellent question. I wish I would have been prepared to answer it. So the Workforce Housing Overlay District has certain criteria that have to be met in addition to the special exception criteria in the zoning ordinance. The focus is impact on community services, police, fire, sewer, water, and roads, impact on highways and sidewalks, character of the neighborhood, a term that is difficult to define, but I think is something that the zoning board is very good at vetting and trying to deal with. The zoning board has to find that they've met the criteria and can impose conditions if they feel necessary to ensure that the criteria will be upheld. I hope I answered your question.
I think so. Okay, thank you.
Wait.
If I sit on that angle.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Just so here. Thank you very much. I'm Whit Spalding. I'm chair of the Hanover Conservation Commission. I'll try and be very brief with this. The first thing I want to say is that Mink Brook Community Forest would not have happened without the hard work of so many people that are here. Rob Houseman in particular, and many members here of the select board. I'm just very grateful for that. This would not have happened without. I'm here talking right now because some of this conversation, unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to comment as a Conservation Commission on the summary that you just saw. There are some things that are missing from it that are significant. Unfortunately, there are a number of issues that haven't been discussed with the site. I'm just going to go over a few of them. I have an entire summary that I would love to submit. Rob, I can submit to you maybe later if that's okay, and it can be distributed to people if they want to see it. This summary was available as of after 5, close of business, or sometime on Friday, so I hadn't a chance to look at it. So there is some significant zoning constraints, and there's some significant conservation constraints that haven't been mentioned. This is going to be a lot of gibberish. My computer won't connect to that, so you'll have to forgive me, but you can take a look at the document later if you'd like. So for zoning constraints, the zoning ordinance provides limited flexibility regarding the dimensional requirements of the single-family lots allowed in the SR2 district. Recent zoning amendments changed maximum densities, but not the dimensional requirements. And so that's going to make it considerably less than the maximum number of units. I'm saying that so that, I don't know if any, are there any Twin Pines people here today? Okay, just take note of that. We're also, there have been non-public discussions with Twin Pines. No matter what happens here, we know we have a lot more affordable housing, workforce housing projects that will be coming. they're going to be involved in a lot of projects. So if they're daunted by this, there will be more. These have been not public sessions, which Joe can describe why that's the case a little later. If their concept, the Twin Pines concept, involves multi-unit family homes or PRD, it may be desirable on a substantive basis, but that's not allowed in either the SR2 or right now. So how can this be consistent with the zoning ordinance without going back to town meeting with another set of zoning amendments? So we need to think about that. Also, back to the map that you saw, the U.S. Forest Service requirement for the forest management, you did see that, hey, maybe there'll be this corridor off to the left, but the equipment you need to do sustainable management is huge. These excavators, skidders, they take up a lot more room and are a lot heavier if you've got pipes underneath. There's a lot of planning that needs to go into that. And the parking and pedestrian access need to facilitate the directional functions. In the roadway, that's going to reduce the number of acres that are available to build on. I think Rob probably covered that with the 2 3/4 acres. I think he's got that covered, but that's a big piece. Conservation constraints. So before the U.S. Forest Service and Hanover Conservancy and others invested, why I'm bringing this up is I hear this all the time, which is like 250 acres are conserved. What's the big deal about 5? I'm not going to go into all the pieces of this, but we identified 10 sensitive ecological areas in the research to determine the value. Rob has touched on that a little bit. Unfortunately, this parcel straddles 2 of them. One of them is a Tier 1 denning habitat, and the other is a open marsh stream complex. Those cannot be replaced. And we know that the smaller density, we all know we have to, that's well in favor of the workforce housing in particular, but to increase the density is going to put those wildlife corridors at significant risk. And again, I'm going to just read a couple of pieces of this. I don't want to bore you. Tell me when my time is getting short. So a total of 10 significant ecological areas, SEAs, were identified. Some of these, such as the Fen Marsh and Mink Brook Wetland Floodplain Complex, have been noted. Others, however, are deserving of mention since they exist as potential contributions to the high value goal of protecting such communities according to the grant application guidelines. The first SEA of this sort is the Birch Mountain Maple Talus Woodland Natural Community, and this is the one that Rob was alluding to on the hill, which is just to the right of the parcel. It's incredible denning habitat. Suitably intact denning sites, particularly those that have late successional old growth forests within them, are very rare, and they provide a unique habitat for these animals' reproductive success. So, why are we risking these high conservation values with increasing the density? Why? That's the question that needs to be answered. I think we know, which is 2 things are being conflated here. One is the need for workforce housing. And the first question there is there a specific town of Hanover? You don't have to answer these now. I'm hoping that they all be answered together. But is there a specific town of Hanover workforce housing need? I think the answer is yes, meaning for town employees that we don't have that we'd like to hire and retain. But when you go to the town website, there's no mention of this. If you type in workforce housing, it's very important to all of us. The most recent document is from 2011. So we've got to fix that. Because what is the problem statement that we're doing? I sense the urgency with bringing this process along with one developer, but how was that decision made? What was the public process of evaluating other developers and the need? So I've got a series of questions. I'd love to have them answered. I will send them to you. It'd be great to have them wrapped all together because I have a feeling the answer is, well, we've got parts of the master plan that address it. We've got parts of these other things, but we'd like to see it all in one place. The FAQs have a lot of inconsistencies. I will submit them for the record, but a couple of key ones that we just need to get cleared right now. In the report that Rob put up there, the page 11, it said the deed requires 5 acres to be transferred to a nonprofit. That is just 100% not true. It's just untrue. Nothing stops the town from developing and operating affordable housing itself. There's also items in there that talk about subject to requirements in the 2020 town meeting warrant article. I've looked through it. I don't see where those requirements exist. Someone's going to have to point that out to me. The original plan that TPL put forward showed this pocket neighborhood concept which Rob talked about. 8 to 12 units. It specifies very clearly in there that you cannot get the neighborhood value of more than 12 units. So what was the process for making that decision to switch to the increased density? I know we say workforce housing writ large, but what are we trying to satisfy right now? Because we saw that description, it's a year and a half till Twin Pines, if they are selected, can even start. Do we not have a need right now? And if so, what is it? How are we satisfying it? I have no idea. It would be great to get those answers. In terms of the not public, Joe, can you just describe why?
Wait,
Yes.
if you could direct the questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Thank you. So the question would be.
And I'm just going to turn around and ask Joe.
No, it's fine. What part of New Hampshire right to know law exceptions are we invoking to not talk about the Twin Pines exercise?
Do you have further?
I think I'd rather hear from other people. I may have one or two others, but that's the key question.
Okay.
And I may have one other after that.
So you have several questions actually, which
that's really.
I'm going to turn to Joe for
that one right now. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'm going to turn to Joe. Actually, Joe, thank you for being here again. It's much appreciated. Couple of questions for you. Specifically, yes, the one that we just asked, but also, can you talk about the deed restrictions as well, please, and elucidate those for everyone, including myself. I've been through this many times, but as you know, I'm not a lawyer and would appreciate it.
So beginning with the non-public session question. 91A, right to know law, there are non-public session caveats. The one that really this implicates is D, consideration of the acquisition, sale, or lease of real or personal property, which, if discussed in public, would likely benefit a party or parties whose interests are adverse to those in the general community. You're in an active real estate negotiation. Parts of that may be resolved, other parts are unknown. Your directive by this year's town meeting was to make this sale subject to terms and conditions that this board came up with. So if you are to discuss this in public, that is all public. So that means the people you're bargaining against have full access to that information as well. So any person negotiating any deal, you have priority lists, you have concerns, you have things that you're willing to move on that you might not be, and having those as open discussions obviously means you lose all of that power, and basically you're just at the mercy of the other side of it. Obviously, when a deal is consummated, you no longer have any need to have that information as secretive. So that's where you're at this point. In terms of the restrictions, there are the restrictions that were given in the two town meeting votes, 2020, I believe, and I have to bounce to another one. No, it was 2023. The pertinent part of that one was And approximately 4 acres will be transferred to the Twin Pines Housing Trust for future development of a small cluster of cottage homes for workforce housing, subject to future approval at town meeting. That was what was voted for in 2020, and then subsequently this past year, to see if the town will vote to authorize the conveyance of tax map 1 lot 11-2 located on the north side of Greensboro Road, acquired by the town in 2020, the prior article, to Twin Pines Housing Trust or another nonprofit organization to be developed as workforce housing on such terms and conditions as the select board may negotiate. So again, you're under this directive to sell this town land from your town meeting, and that's what you folks are doing.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Wait, you've got a ton of other questions.
No, I think, let's let other people talk. The last two would just be, can the select board point us to the problem statement for the immediate need for workforce housing for the town? So
Yes,
It's on the website.
It is on the.
Where is it?
It's go to the Sustainable Hanover Master Plan website. It's, what is it? Rob, help me, hanovermasterplan.com.
It's right there on the front page. I was reading.
Which chapter is it? Do you know what chapter? Okay, I've looked through, I haven't.
There's a whole chapter on workforce
But
housing.
does it identify how many?
781.
No, but what does the town need right now for its employees to, do we know? Like, I mean, 'cause I keep hearing, I'm guessing, because it's, do we know how many?
It's not just for the town's workforce, it's for the entire community workforce.
What the town is looking for in terms of number of employees it's trying to house?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
We're trying to provide housing for 800 units of housing, roughly.
781.
Okay.
Yeah.
800 units of housing, and how it breaks down, it's actually in the Upper Valley housing.
Yeah,
but
that part I've seen. I was just under the impression that there were some immediate professional needs for the town.
There are.
There are, but we,
Do we know how many? Is it as simple as looking through the open positions? Is that
No.
Okay. All right.
I mean, we can't
had-
say that there are.
No.
I mean,
No,
when
that's
people choose whether they work for the town or the school district or Dartmouth or DH, they choose where they live. We do not have workforce housing in this community, and so I think it's safe to say, and we all probably have family, friends, and a fellow work employee friends and colleagues, that there is no workforce housing for less than the what is $115,000 income. So
Can I just one second? Can I add up? And as you may remember, at the most recent town meeting, we had Joanne Conroy and please somebody help me out. Who was the other person who spoke?
Clay Adams.
Clay Adams.
Yeah.
Mascoma Bank.
Mascoma Bank, essentially pleading or strongly suggesting that we support workforce housing in general. Of course, this was, but.
Athos, I mean, one of the other, there's a bunch of different layers. We have lost a few employees who have applied for jobs just on the town side, and we're one of the smaller employers in the town and the region.
Right.
We've had a number of employees accept positions, then go on Zillow, and then turn down the positions.
Totally.
And that's definitely a problem in my getting out in the community and talking to other employers, like we just mentioned, that is a very common occurrence among employers in our region. And one of the biggest that have been impacted by this are the retail merchants in Hanover's downtown, which provide a ton of value back into the community, but are having a tremendous amount of trouble hiring people that can live within commuting distance even of Hanover. We've seen a huge shift in the demographics of the workforce of our employees in town, with fewer and fewer people living in Hanover and more employees living further and further away, which increase their commuting costs, which means that we have to pay more to try and compensate for that, and it makes it harder for people to get here in the winter. And obviously there's been a lot of regional work done, like the Keys to the Valley, Vital Communities, and a number of other organizations over the last 10 or 20 years have been identifying a pretty significant need for workforce housing in the region.
What about this is the only question I'll go away, the process for deciding that Twin Pines would be the one with whom you would negotiate non-public. Is that information available somewhere? What that criteria was, how that happened, are there minutes for that prior to?
Rob, do you have any way of addressing that?
And Becky, you can email me later if that exists. I
But-
might take anyone else's time. Okay.
If we have it.
Yeah.
I think what's important to note is the 2020 vote specified twin ponds.
Or some other nonprofit.
And then when you say vote,
Yeah.
Rob, you're talking about
No,
town meeting.
The 2020 was.
Oh, 20, I'm losing track of time, yes, it did.
2023 went back.
2023, we added some other.
It did. Thank you.
There's not a lot.
So, thank you, Whit. That was information packed. Other folks I know want to have a chance to speak to. You had your hand up first, sir.
Thanks again.
If you could just identify yourself, please.
Absolutely. And thank you for taking my testimony. I'm Alan Reeds. I'm with the Hanover Co-op Food Stores and Auto Service Centers. I speak on behalf of our employees. In 1936, the co-op got its start in a Hanover home. To be precise, it was Roger Bristol's basement at 35 East Wheelock Street. Well, the Hanover Co-op is not a newcomer to the conversation of affordable housing. As some in the room tonight know, in the 1970s, the co-op owned 130 acres on Route 5 in Norwich. Among plans that were under detailed consideration was the creation of cooperative housing. The lack of sewer and water was a major factor in the demise of that effort. Today, we still seek to support both policy and practical community efforts to foster meaningful creation of safe, decent, affordable places for people to live. The shortage of employees for businesses like ours is directly connected to the shortage of available homes and apartments. Many of our employees are desperate for places to live close to work. Most travel upwards of an hour away. 0.1% of the Hanover Co-op's total employees live in Hanover. The project under discussion tonight will not allow our business, the business that's owned by some here, to be fully staffed so we can return to longer hours or properly staffed departments like our meat and deli counters. Nor will it reduce the workload on our essential neighbors, the stress, who come to work to serve you and me and vendors like our local farmers. But by taking the appropriate step to provide sensible housing through gentle density, like the town has put forth, will make a difference in the housing crisis. And it will also do something else. It will comply with New Hampshire's 2008 workforce housing law under RSA 674. The law has roots in a 1991 state Supreme Court case. In 2007, the legislature used the term housing crisis and put forth RSA 674 as a bipartisan bill that was signed by Governor Lynch. My hope is that all in town honor the opportunities that projects like Mink Brook provide, not just as obligation, but as the common ground of community. On behalf of co-op employees, thanks for hearing my words.
Thank you very much.
Can we get that in writing?
I think you had your hand up before. Please, sir, right there.
Can we get that testimony from
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is David Clem. I live at 6 Redsboro Road in Etna. What concerns me the most tonight, frankly, is the paralysis of process. I'm strongly in favor of this select board taking whatever action is necessary to get something built that satisfies a pressing need for the entire community. Just as the Conservation Commission has its priorities established as to what motivates them, the select board, in my opinion, should have a broader priority. And that is not just to respond to the people that voted for you, but to respond to the community at large in the best way you see fit. I would hope that we could change the language in our conversation so that we're not talking about a constituency that needs housing, but that we're talking about our shared need as a community. And that involves not only housing for people who require assistance, but it requires diversity in our population so that we thrive as a community. no ecosystem, whether it's invasive species or it's discrimination in zoning, can survive without change. So I would urge you to think of that larger picture in terms of workforce housing. I understand that I am known locally as a real estate developer, which is true. Some people know that I have built over 2,000 units of what used to be affordable housing, then it was mixed income housing, now it's workforce housing. The new moniker is cottage style housing. It's absolutely clear. I think it was a mistake to limit your negotiations with Twin Pines, even though they are an excellent organization and they have fulfilled an important public purpose. The limits that your council just talked about doesn't allow you to have a healthy competition in the marketplace. I assure you that the Upper Valley does not lead the state, much less the country, in providing workforce housing options at far more affordable prices than we see here. The COVID crisis and the so-called supply chain disruption has made it difficult for any residential development to pencil. And if you're relying on public assistance or grant money, it will be virtually impossible to make this work unless there is density. I'm not saying what the number is, I haven't done the analysis. But zoning is a very crude and blunt instrument for quality development. It is an imperfect way to see quality development. I wish the more meetings you require and the more public forums, with all due respect, only drives up the cost per unit, however many Twin Pines or another nonprofit affiliate chooses to build. It just adds to the complexity of the overhead part of the component. The hard costs are the primary, but it will dissuade other nonprofits or even Twin Pines from getting soaked into the process with multiple agendas, and quite frankly, the select board is the appropriate body to resolve those conflicting agendas. In 1970, my wife and I became Hanover residents and voted for the first time. We also rented a one-bedroom apartment near downtown. It cost us $100 a month, including heat. We could barely afford it. I don't think we were known as the workforce then. We were just struggling students trying to find a place to live so we could walk to our employment. That apartment now rents for over $2,000 a month. That's the housing crisis.
Yeah.
And I hope you take action. I hope you expedite your decision and show the leadership that I know you're capable of doing. We will be a better community for your action. Thank you.
I forgot who had their hand up next. I'm sorry. Please.
My name is Jim Larrick. I'm a Hanover resident. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Mascoma Bank. I'm also on the board of Twin Pines, so I wear a few hats in this meeting. I am here to just express my support for this project, very eloquently said by the co-op representative. I don't have much more to say than what he was able to say, but we do have a housing problem. We hear from our customers all the time. Mascoma is doing many things to try to address it through loan programs and things like this. This is an excellent project to bring workforce housing, and we support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Next, please.
Told you I'd be back. Once again, my name is Rich Greger. I am a resident of Hanover. I currently serve on the Hanover Finance Committee. and I am an owner of a condo at Guile Hill Development. And in full disclosure, I was president of the Guile Hill Homeowners Association during the difficult time that Rob alluded to earlier. I do want to make one point of clarification about that. As far as the ownership or the development, I should say, of the Guile Hill community property, I just want to point out that Guile Hill was conceived as a project with the express goal of providing enhanced level of affordable housing to the town of Hanover. The town granted the land to the project with which stipulated that ultimately 50% of the housing would be affordable. The original developer, Guile Hill Real Estate Housing, LLC, was comprised of Twin Pines Housing Trust, a nonprofit, as well as the Heartland Group. And I want to make that clear that they were the original developers. It was kind of indicated earlier that Twin Pines was not one of the original developers, but if we're going to be splitting hairs, it was actually the Guile Hill Real Estate Housing, LLC, which was the original developer of record. With that being said, I do have one other comment I want to make regarding the town's website. When I tried to download the FAQ for the Mink Brook development, that resided on an external website, and I'm not sure why that was the case. It's on ScriptD, which is a third-party website. So Rob Hausman was gracious enough to download a copy and email it to me, but I was not able to do it directly without having to register on that site, which I was not going to do. So I'm just curious as to why that was the case.
Alex?
Yeah, you can download it on the website.
If you register.
No, there's a link directly on the website where there's a PDF document in Microsoft OneDrive. So that's available on the website. There's also Scribd, which is a third-party platform that makes it a little easier for people to see documents because it embeds it in the web page itself, so you don't have to click delete. So the idea is that we provide both options, and you can
why does it have to be hosted on a third-party website to begin with? Why isn't it on the town's website?
So, like what I was saying is there's two options. So there's an option where you can download it directly through Microsoft OneDrive.
I don't have a Microsoft OneDrive.
You don't need one.
Well, I was not able to do it. I tried several ways. I even tried to cut and paste it, but I wasn't able to do anything to download it. So that's just for your reference. I don't know if anybody else had any issues.
Yeah, and you can always reach out, and I think Rob sent you the FAQ document.
Yeah, he did, and I appreciate that, and it was very helpful. And so with that being said, I will return to the topic at hand. And before I start my comments, I just want to say that I'm not really here on my own volition. I was asked to be here by several parties to share my viewpoint, which I think is somewhat unique because I am sort of one that has lived in a mixed community. I currently do not, but I feel, I don't know if anybody on the select board has contacted people that do currently live in mixed community housing to get their viewpoint, but if not, I'm here to share mine. And I have prepared a lot that I wanted to go through, but I realize too that time is precious, and I'm going to leave it up to you, Mr. Chair, whether you want me to go through a little bit of the history of Guile, because to quote George Santayana, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And I think there was several lessons that could be learned from the Guile development. As alluded to earlier by Rob, there were some difficulties with that. I'm prepared to give you a brief history of that, but if you, for the sake of time, prefer I do not, I can just sort of jump directly to some key questions and points.
Could you, excuse me.
But I do feel, I mean,
could you jump directly to the
okay, I do feel that the history is very important.
No, I'm not belittling that.
Okay, so with that being said,
if we get back, maybe we can get back to that afterward.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the points I want to make are directly related to that, but I will say just two things then, since I'm going to do the Cliff Notes version here, that I just want to point out in the current financial environment that we're in, it's very similar to what was going on at the time that Guile was being first built. For those of you not familiar with the Treasury yield inversion, basically when you have an inversion of the yield curve, which is basically short-term interest rates are higher than the long-term interest rates, 12 times out of, in the last about 70 years, 12 times out of 12, that inversion has indicated a recession within 7 to 25 months afterwards. It's never failed to predict that, with an average lag of 14 months. The only reason I bring this up is that just recently, last year, there was an inversion in the yield curve, and I fully expect that history will again repeat itself where we will see potentially a recession in the next probably year or so. That being said, it has a huge impact on housing as well as interest rates. As you've seen, interest rates have climbed dramatically in the last year and a half. And so the amount a person can afford, which directly speaks to the issue of affordable housing, is going to be predicated on what the interest rates are. So I think it's a really important point to consider when you're discussing affordable housing is what are the macroeconomic conditions that are affecting our community. So I will skip my carefully prepared notes on the timeline, and I'm just going to cut to the chase about the hard lessons that were learned from my experience at Guile. And one of the most important points that I want to make, because given the closed door discussions about deals and things like that, when the Guile Hill development was done, there was no performance bond put in place. I believe it was the first time and maybe the only time that the town waived that requirement. That basically put the development in jeopardy of being completion because of the financial crisis that emerged in 2008. And because of that, one of the partners, the developer, Heartland Group, ended up going bankrupt and essentially left Twin Pines holding the bag. And I will say that I did work extensively with Andrew Winter during that period, which was around 2014, 13, and even 2012, to address and make sure that the development was finished as envisioned, although it did change, and I can certainly go into detail about that. But I will say that Andrew is a very diligent and thorough and hardworking person that I think that the project at Guile would not have succeeded without his efforts, as well as the condo owners in the town. So it's really important, I think, that going forward, any projects, no matter the scale, make sure that you have a performance bond in place, because we have market-changing conditions like we have right now, where you could see somebody go bankrupt because of high interest rates or whatever. I mean, you have regional banks that are failing, so there's nothing to say that that can't happen here. Another lesson that was drawn from that is be flexible on the project scope and implementation. I'm not going to go into all the details. I can if you have questions, but I will say that the completion of the project was really severely constrained and hamstrung by some of the demands that the town did place on the developer, as well as the Guile Condo Association as a whole. Because of that, essentially what happened was that the Condo Association had to be contracted, resulting in, instead of the original 59 units that were supposed to be built, having only 44 built. Those 15 units were then transferred over to Twin Pines rental side. And if you're familiar with the Guile Hill development, 59 units originally were supposed to be built as condominiums. Of those 59 units, I believe it was 14 units were supposed to be affordable market workforce housing, while the other 61 units were rentals, of which I believe 15 were rental units that were market-based, and the remaining were subsidized or affordable housing units. I will make a point about that, since we now have sort of the benefit of hindsight. There's been some issues that have come up, and recently you may have noticed there was an article in the Valley News about some changes that the Condo Association required fees to be raised, and as a result, some of the affordable units are now being severely constrained in their ability to pay the ongoing fees that are required to maintain the property. I can certainly elaborate on that as well, but again, for the sake of time, I'm just going to focus on the hard lessons that were learned. And also, and this kind of leads to that point, is that you really need to pay attention to future expenditures and infrastructure costs going forward, especially when it comes to insurance, capital improvements, and things like that. One thing you may or may not know about the Guile development is that we are responsible for all the paving and the plowing of the roads. Paving is a huge financial burden on the community. When you have a large percentage of the owners in basically affordable housing, there's limitations on how much rents can be increased. There's limitations on how much fees can be increased on the condo side because of those affordable units. And so that really puts a sort of a damper on the ability for the community to react to severe changes in the financial environment, which we're facing currently today. So that, I think, is another really important lesson to be learned. The other thing, too, is when you start developing a project like this, obviously, if you're doing a mixed housing where you have affordable and non-affordable units, the previous developer, I think, spoke very eloquently about the challenges of a development, but one of the things that I think should be also taken into consideration is that when you do have a mixed community like that, the profit margins for a developer are very thin to non-existent, and hence leading to potential bankruptcy, which was the case with the Guile development. And then the other lesson I would mention as a hard lesson is that when it comes to affordability, rentals seem to be a better approach than trying to sell subsidized workforce-owned housing. It's kind of a harsh lesson, but I think that as a renter, they have a little bit more flexibility versus being locked into a mortgage and being hamstrung by future expenditures that may develop over time vis-a-vis like a fee increase or whatever to maintain the property. Now the good lessons learned, now that I've gone through all the hard lessons that I would say that have been learned from Guile, is that there is it shows that a diverse socioeconomic community can coexist in Hanover. I mean, you can kind of think of Guile as a sort of little petri dish, if you want to look at it that way, as, sort of a template for how things can be potentially expanded to the greater Hanover community. The other thing which I noticed during Rob's presentation, which I think is awesome, is that he kind of really didn't state it, but he indicated that there's going to be solar and other, uses of maybe green construction. And Guile was a gold certified LEED development, which some people may not know. And as an owner, I truly appreciate that, not only from an environmental standpoint, but also the fact that utility costs have been considerably lower than the average. Just to give you an example, our unit's approximately 1,200 square feet. Our greatest propane bill, I believe, was around $250 in all the years that we've owned it. And I was one of the original purchasers. So in the course of approximately 14 years, we've never had a propane bill more than $250 or so, which is an amazing amount considering some of the cold temperatures we've had. The other thing, too, is that I will say that in conclusion about the lessons learned, despite numerous setbacks, a group of dedicated individuals can ultimately succeed in bringing a mixed income housing project to completion, even if it's not originally as envisioned. So with that, I just want to make few other questions that I would like to address the board regarding the current development, and if I do have time to do so. If not, I can certainly yield. Okay, yeah. So getting to the FAQ, it's pretty obvious that the maximum number is going to be 29 if its development goes further on that project. And I guess the one question I have is this number an actual hard cap, or is another round of zoning changes could potentially change the scope and size of the project?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that is what the current zoning is.
Right, I know, but it was also amended earlier to allow that.
And it was. Nancy,
we don't know. We can't say.
So it is possible the project could grow even
this
the
is a
scope
listening session.
from the 29 units that are currently authorized.
It'd be a decision at town meeting.
Yeah.
But we also,
Go ahead.
I mean, Joe, maybe you can speak to this. I mean, as the select board, we can cap it, right? If we want to.
Oh, I mean, you're doing.
Within, some of the things that we're considering in terms of options, we can.
If that's the conversation you want to have, absolutely. I mean, but as to future zoning,
all of us are going to vote for future zoning, right?
Right.
Okay.
There's nothing on the table right now, but we are adopting our town master plan soon, and housing is one of the main goals. And so zoning changes will follow soon after, and it'll
given that
be
there's 781
Yep.
a need of that number. It's obvious that 29 is not going to cut it when it comes to satisfying that.
Every little house.
Okay, on number 7 of the FAQ, referring to the final plan and how the public is involved, I just had a quick comment, and I just want to reiterate, even though it's been said, that although Twin Pines is mentioned in the Article 15, it does say or another nonprofit organization to be developed as workforce housing on such terms and conditions as the select board may negotiate. So I guess the question I have for the select board is, were any other parties considered for this project, or has it always been Twin Pines?
The discussions that we've had have been with Twin Pines.
Okay. And with that being said, I just was curious as to why not. No other developers have been approached. I can't imagine there's not somebody else out there that could do this.
I'm not prepared to answer that myself. Rob?
If I could, I would simply acknowledge that the zoning amendment that was passed in 2021 requires a developer to be a nonprofit to develop workforce housing specifically, which narrows the options considerably. In our region, I think there are only 2.
Okay. All right. So there's obviously one other person that could be considered, or organization, I should say. Okay. And then I guess in number 13 of the FAQ, which was what is workforce housing? Yes.
Well, I'm sorry. What do you define? Oh, we had trouble numbering.
Oh, sorry. Well, this is based on the FAQ that was sent to me. Okay.
No. The one I'm looking at, this was a mistake, and it was a typo.
It just basically says what is workforce housing.
Thank you. Yes. Please ask your question.
Yeah, sure. So regarding that, it states in the FAQ that developments must reserve a minimum 50% of their units for low and to moderate income households as defined by the HUD. And I guess as envisioned now, will Mink Brook be 50%, 100%, or something in between as far as the housing that's reserved for low to moderate income? Because is this going to be potentially a mix, like with market rate units versus, or is this purely going to be just low income or low to moderate income housing? Because it does, based on the FAQ, it does indicate that there could be some flexibility as to how that is developed.
If I may, thank you.
Sure.
In order to achieve the density, 100% of the units must be rented to or occupied by individuals who qualify, meaning they earn no more than 120% of the mean for Grafton County. A family of 4, the mean is 115,000. Or a household of 4. 50% of those units would be reserved for 80% or less.
Okay.
So I think that answers it.
Kind of, I guess. I mean, I guess it sounds like there is some flexibility in how that's going to be allocated. I mean, you said 50% to 80%, but it could be more than that as well.
No. So 100% of the units will be rented to individuals earning not more than 120% of the mean for Grafton County.
Okay.
50% of the units need to be reserved for those who earn 80% of the mean or less.
Mean or median?
Median.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's okay.
I don't have the document.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely specifies median, so.
Yes,
all right.
median.
All right, so has it been decided that they'll all be rentals as opposed to a purchase unit?
It has not been decided.
Okay, so that's, all right, because I just, again, if you decide to go down the purchase route, I just would ask, given the experience at Guile, that you have some sort of contingency plan if financial considerations have to dictate certain choices be made by those units. And then I guess the last question I had was following that, what are the next steps? And this kind of goes back to the point about the negotiations being behind closed doors. But going forward, will there be full transparency about the environmental impact studies, and more importantly, the source of the funding for the project as it and guarantees for its completion.
The terms will be public, as our counsel just said. I'm sorry, could you, what was,
Yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have to say then. Appreciate your time and for your diligence in trying to.
Thank you, that was a lot of information.
Environment, I hadn't even known. I tried to be as brief as I could. Thank you.
Next, please. Right in the front here.
Hi. Eileen Clausen. First, I just have a suggestion. You know what would be really great would be if there's, is this a microphone?
It is.
Oh, it's here, but it's not working very well, but maybe it's my age.
It's plugged into CATV, it is not a room.
Oh, because the people sitting here, they're facing you and it's really hard. And I'm sitting in the front row, it's really hard to hear.
We can have folks sit on one end or the other if that would be more helpful to the listening audience.
For
What'd you say?
older folks, it might be some improvement needed.
The only one you can really hear is Alex. Why don't we used to do this in the past. We'd have you sit on one end or the other, like Rob was
chair
doing.
right there. And there's a chair right there.
Head of the table.
There you go.
I'll sit here.
If you can, that'd be wonderful.
All right.
Is that okay for the CATV? Can you pick up the camera there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Eileen Clausen. I've lived on Greensboro Road for 47 years. There were cows on the road when I first came. There's been a lot of development all 47 years. I've never objected to any of it, nor am I objecting to this. We all know, I think probably everybody in the room and all the towns around know we need workforce housing. And my only concern is what kind and how many. I understand that you sell the property to an outfit like Twin Pines first, and then you decide with them what's gonna go on there. Wouldn't it make more sense to do it the other way around? To figure out what you wanted to go on there and then hire somebody to do it? Because Twin Pines is a nonprofit, bless their hearts, they do a lot of good work, but don't they have the town sort of over a barrel once you've sold the land to them? And they're a nonprofit, they only have so much money, they're gonna tell you, well, we can't do that. You know, what we'd really like to do is just put one big apartment building in this beautiful conservation land. I think that would be very unfortunate if that happens. It's something you to think about. And my other question is, I was curious, once this workforce housing gets sold to somebody and they live in it for 10 years or so, they make some renovations in their kitchen, they put in a new kitchen or, you know, they upgrade, put in better floors or something. They have to move, so now they want to sell that property. How do you keep the price at a certain level? People have put money into the building, they want to get it back. So how does it remain workforce housing is what I'd like to know.
Eileen, as we just mentioned a few minutes ago, we've not yet determined whether or not it's going to be rental or for sale units. That will be up, part of the negotiation. And you asked about, why can't we do the financing first and then give Twin Pines the land? We are not, as a town, in the financing business, and it's going to be up to Twin Pines to be able to take this agreement that we have negotiated with them with all various terms and so forth, and then they go to several banks that they do business with and lending organizations, and they see who has what kind of money for nonprofits developing housing. That's a whole line of work that we as a town are not getting into, nor have ever gotten into, nor should be getting into. So that's the reason it's the process. That's the reason the process is the way it is.
Well, is it fair to say that it's not really the town that decides what goes there? It would be Twin Pines.
Well, we will have several, as Rob mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Board public hearings, and there will be several opportunities for people to offer their opinions and make contributions the same way that you are tonight.
Before it's conveyed?
Thank you.
No.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Joe, you want to answer?
Sure. Maybe I was not clear in my presentation. The concept is an options agreement. The options agreement gives Twin Pines the right to seek funding, to perform the boots on the ground work to design, to develop the baseline information that will be used in the development of a plan, hire an architect, they go out to bid and hire an architect, and then work through all the permitting processes. Subject to the terms and conditions that the select board impose on that options agreement, once those terms and conditions are met, the property will be transferred to them. So everything else will happen before the property is transferred. And the conditions will be subject to the select board review.
At what point is that process made public?
The options agreement will be public once it's negotiated and signed. Like any purchase and sales agreement that the town or any private individual goes through.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Jeff Acker, I live at 27 Greensboro Road. So I have a couple of questions, and I guess my first sort of overall thought is, I don't think there's anybody in the room that doubts the need for workforce housing. I don't think there's anybody in the room that doesn't think well of Twin Pines. I don't think there's anybody in the room that's against this in concept. I think it's important to keep in mind that what we were told in 2020 is very different than what we're being told in 2023. And so my overall ask of the select board would be that you, as you negotiate this agreement, that you honor the spirit of what we were told in 2020, which is also what's in the deed. The deed was from the 2020 town meeting article, not the 2023 town meeting article. I have a specific question about how we went from 4 acres in 2020 to 5 acres in 2023, which just so happens to be exactly the size the lot needs to be to qualify for the density bump, because you had to get 3 acres into the RR zone to make it work. And if you only had the 4 acres transferred, you'd have 2 in the SR and 2 in the RR, and the whole thing would go kaboom. So I'm curious how we went from 4 acres to 5 acres after the zoning amendment was passed in 2022. All of a sudden we went to 5 acres. Why didn't this happen in 2023 or 2020 with 4 acres? I'm wondering if anybody could.
We didn't.
Just 1 second. Do you have other questions, Jeff?
I do, yeah.
Why don't you list them? I'm just trying to get away from having people make demands of our town staff.
I'm
trying to write them down. Go ahead.
Okay. So how we went from 4 acres to 5 acres.
Yep.
Is an important, I think, thing to consider, and I think important for you all to recognize that the neighborhood, which was overwhelmingly in support of this, people like Mrs. Clausen, like Mrs. Bragg, like Tracy Smith I see back there, all sorts of people from the Greensboro Road neighborhood who actually are the ones that made this possible. Because if it wasn't for people like Mrs. Bragg, Mrs. Clausen, and Tracy Smith, there would actually be a continuing care retirement community there right now. Okay, I know the town came in and says, oh, we did this. That's, I'm sorry, nonsense. It would be built. The town was in favor of it until we said no. So to now turn around and kind of thumb your nose at the neighborhood is
a little disrespectful, and I'm sorry, but it's a neighborhood that has been disrespected by this town over and over and again through the years. So I think we should keep in mind why we're actually sitting here is because the people who were sitting there stopped the community here, this retirement community, and allowed this whole thing to happen. The question of public session and non-public versus public. I think it's important to note, I understand that your attorney says you are allowed to do that. I understand that the customary way to negotiate a real estate transaction for a town is in non-public session, and I understand all the reasons for that. But the ordinance, or the whatever it is, the town statute, state statute, gives you the authority to decide whether you want to do it or not. You're not required to do it. And it also specifically talks about going into non-public session when there is a party whose interests are adverse to the interests of the town. So if you're going to tell me that the interests of Twin Pines are adverse to the interests of the town, that's all the more reason why it should be in public session, in my opinion. So I really would ask you, you have every right to go into public session, but you don't have to. That's a decision that you make. And I think doing this in public session and having these conversations in public would go a long way toward reassuring everybody that what's happening is really in the best interest of the town. The other point I want to make, which I sort of started on, is just recognizing that the deed doesn't require you to transfer 5 acres. The deed doesn't specify a number of acres. The deed talks about Article 23 from 2020, and Article 23 specifies 4 acres. So if the deed requires anything, it requires 4 acres. But if we're going to talk about the deed and the requirements of the deed, then we should also look at what else the deed says, which is the parcel shall be used for public access to the Mink Brook Community Forest and the future development of a small cluster of cottage homes for workforce housing. That was in the language from 2020. That was what was said in public at the meeting at 2020 when we voted. That's in the deed. That's what people thought they were donating money for when they donated money. So I would really urge you, whether you do it in public or not, to really respect what that original intent was. Andrew's going to tell you, well, that's not economically viable. Well, it is economically viable. It might just require a different method. Like all these for-profit businesses that have so eloquently told us about the need for workforce housing for their employees could make donations, which could potentially make it economically viable. If it's so important to Mascoma Savings Bank, if it's so important to Dartmouth Hospital, if it's so important to the co-op, they can make donations. They can figure out a way to make it economically viable. So the argument that, well, it's not economically viable unless we do 29 units, that doesn't really hold water. And that brings me to my last point about water. Rob in his presentation talked about the zoning ordinance and the zoning ordinance requirements for stormwater runoff. Because stormwater runoff has been the issue on Greensboro Road with all these developments for years, right? That has been the hot button issue. And so I want to point out that one thing that people don't realize is the stormwater requirements of the zoning ordinance deal with the water that lands on that piece of property. They say nothing about the water that runs onto that piece of property from an adjacent property. And the problem, as we know at Greensboro Road is the bottom of the valley. So all of those developments along Greensboro Road that have had all their stormwater problems and all their flooding problems, washed out the road 4 times in the last 20 years, are because the water that comes from above and runs across their property is not accounted for by the engineers and the stormwater and the zoning ordinance. I don't know that anybody can solve that problem. My specific ask for you when you're negotiating this agreement with Twin Pines would be to require that a third-party independent engineer review all of the engineering and an independent third party oversee the actual construction of the stormwater systems. The town has told us time and time again, they don't have the staff, they don't have the expertise, and I understand that. And believe me, I don't want to live in a town where there's enough people on the town staff with the expertise to review every developer's plans. And I don't want to live in a town where there's enough people to go inspect the site every week, like should be. But we have the ability, you have the unique ability in this situation to impose those conditions. Don't leave it to the zoning board. You, Joanna said it, you can put a cap on the number of units, you can put whatever conditions you want in that option agreement today. You can't allow them to do less than the zoning requires, but you can require them to do more. And those protections, I think, would be really important in getting this thing built successfully in a way that doesn't create another ongoing problem and another stick in the eye for a neighborhood that, quite frankly, has had too many. So, I don't know if I had any questions. I guess the only one I had is how do we go from 4 to 5?
He's got an entire
No, you've given a lot of very helpful points. Can I ask, Rob, can you talk about the acreage issues,
Sure.
please?
Jeff, can I take over the mic, please?
Please do.
So as part of the acquisition of the property, Trust for Public Lands hired Horizon surveyors to go out and survey the property. And in doing so, we were asked to delineate, so we're talking 2020, fall of 2020, draft surveys were completed. The rear of the 5-acre parcel, and I think, Jeff, if correct me if I'm wrong, but the 2020 Warren article, which would have been July 2020, said approximately 4 acres because we didn't have a survey. We completed the survey, and in laying out that boundary, we went to the natural edge, which is the stone wall. A logical place to conclude. It was a log landing to a stone wall. So the boundary line went to that edge. In addition, our zoning ordinance requires the lot area in each of the zones to meet the minimum requirements. So in 2020, the surveyor working for Trust for Public Lands was using our regulatory structure to comply with the underlying zoning. You couldn't have a hanging chad of less than 3 acres, if you will.
I know. I understand.
So,
but I didn't write the Warren article. You never could have had a 4-acre lot there.
And where was the decision once that size was found about whether that would go to conservation or to development? Was there a public discussion of that?
Wait, just 1 second, wait.
So the end result was, where do you logically put the boundary? It was the disturbed log landing to the stone wall. That's what was included, minus the 1 acre for the house and the balance of the property on the north end. So we have 5 acres. Why was it 5 acres? There was a logical boundary that we could see in the field that said put it at the stone wall.
But 5 acres is also the minimum lot size it could be if it includes any acreage in the RR.
Correct.
So my point is, in 2020, you never could have legally carved out a 4-acre lot on that piece of property because you would have been left with only 2 acres in the RR, would have been a non-conforming lot.
Again, we didn't have a survey, and we
didn't have
didn't
a zoning ordinance.
we were making certain assumptions.
It doesn't matter.
We were making
We have
certain-
5 acres, that's what we're
We
working
were
with
making
right
certain
now.
assumptions and assumed that there was 3 acres in the RR.
I just don't want Rob
Yeah,
to be
no,
on the
I
hot
get
seat.
it. That's fine. I think it's
I do want to start with, Jeff, if I offended anybody on the Greensboro Road neighborhood, which I am a part of, by suggesting that we took credit for stopping Paragon, that was not my intent. I was simply saying that the town was party to a legal action for over 10 years, and then that legal action ended, and they relinquished their right to purchase.
I agree. I understand. That's fair. So.
Thank you, Rob. Joe, could you clarify the deed issues again, please? There's been a couple of questions that Jeff just had with regard to that. Just spell it out in the most, and speak to the crowd, that's us, please. And I appreciate your flexibility, thank you very much.
Again, you're subject to 2 warrant articles here, and yes, the deed refers to the 2020 article, which called for approximately a 4-acre parcel. I think importantly for that was the acquisition of 265 acres was the entirety of the parcel. You then had these different functions, water tower, 1 acre for recouping of the cost. So then you were left with this approximately 4-acre parcel to devote to workforce housing. Approximately, obviously, there's some leeway there. Surveys were done to allow for this to happen. It results in 5. 2023 comes around and everybody voted to sell, well, not everybody, but the majority voted to sell the property, the 5-acre parcel. And that's what you're tasked with doing here. I don't see any issue with Article 23 originally because you're not undermining the purpose of the other 260 roughly acres. If there was such a discrepancy that now it undermines the ability to have that conservation land, et cetera, then you have a problem. But approximately 4 resulting in 5, being a small, like 2% of the lot or something, you're still in keeping with the spirit of that.
Thank you very much, Joe.
I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, just one more question. Would you ask the attorney what the meaning in the deed of the small cluster of cottage homes of workforce housing and what import that has on the?
I was going to ask that, I forgot to ask. Sorry, Joe, do you mind coming back up? Now, the warrant article, I think, did discuss the cottage housing. Does the deed actually discuss that as well?
I believe the deed refers to that warrant article. So the warrant article includes the language of future development of small cluster of cottage homes for workforce housing.
Just to clarify, the deed actually says public access to the Mink Brook Community Forest and the future development of a small cluster of cottage homes for workforce housing. That's in that language, that's directly from the deed. It also references the conditions of Article 23, and the conditions of Article 23 also talk about the small cluster of cottage homes.
I have to take a look at the deed on that.
Okay, thank you. Pardon me, sorry, excuse me, in the back there, yes, hand.
Apparently, see, we
Yes.
head to the Norwich bookstore talking. You wanna go talk to them? Someone just said they're not getting on, they can't watch it live anymore.
It's the right place?
That's perfect, thank you.
Okay, great. I'm gonna make some brief comments before I run home to my babysitter. My name is Lisa Coitry. I'm a resident and homeowner at 17 Barrel Farms Lane.
Thanks.
I appreciate the opportunity for tonight's dialogue, and I similarly appreciate the diversity of perspectives that have been shared tonight. I'm one of 60 signatories of a petition letter that was submitted to the Select Board this afternoon requesting a public forum for meaningful community engagement on the topic of proposed workforce housing at the Mink Brook Community Forest site. This is a good start. The petition letter generated a robust community response in under 72 hours following less than a week's notice of tonight's public discussion of the Mink Brook Community Forest. The letter also derived from growing concern among Hanover residents about a perceived lack of process, transparency, and community dialogue on the housing component of the community forest, which has changed in scope, as we've heard tonight, since the original conservation agreement. I'd like to share a few concerns that have come up in the generation of the letter, including, first, tonight's clarification of the options agreement was helpful. And others, given concerns about the conveyance of the property to Twin Pines before public opportunities to comment and to provide input on proposed plans. One question is whether this could still be done prior to the options agreement being finalized. I also appreciate the clarification about the closed session meetings and still wonder if there is only one presumptive bidder in this negotiation process, how the need for confidentiality if there's public information that would not be to the benefit of another party, that's the counterparty in the negotiation. I'd also like to share, with widespread acknowledgement and support for workforce housing needs in Hanover and the Upper Valley more generally, the Mink Community Forest was and is a project of conservation priority that seems to increasingly be taking a second step to the housing development context of the conversation. And I worry that supplanting the importance of housing development over conservation might inadvertently set up barriers to future needs for workforce development in and around Hanover. I had the opportunity to meet with Alex at the Mink Community Forest site, Alex Torpy, earlier this summer in early July at his request, along with 3 other longtime residents of Greensboro Road and Burrell Farms. We were grateful to be able to introduce him to the site firsthand, as he had not been there previously. And over the course of a productive exchange of information, history, and perspectives, Alex admitted that neither a small cluster of cottage houses nor 29 units would make a dent in what we learned tonight was a 781 housing need. That comment, while recognizing that there's still a lot to learn when you're in your first year as a town manager, did raise some questions as into the effort that's gone into change the scope of this project that, again, is a conservation project by design. To wrap up on a few technical points, I had a similar issue trying to access and download the FAQs earlier today. The new website, while appreciative for the effort that goes into that, is still a little bit clunky and could probably benefit for some upgrades. I was also surprised to not be able to get contact information easily for any of you, my elected public officials, although luckily in a small town we can track that down quite easily. I trust the select board to take under consideration the broad community feedback shared not only tonight, but via the survey and other communication measures, and to honor the original terms that were made to that Mink Community Forest preservation. I appreciate the opportunity of commenting tonight.
Thank you. In the way back, sir.
Trying to be super brief. Will Carney, new Hanover resident, 14 months. I just want to take a quick survey to see if anyone else here is a renter or if it's just me, because I want to be here to be the voice for the people who can't be here because they're commuting 60 to 90 minutes a day to be here, and all the concerns you've heard tonight are very real, and I'd like to offer the principle of charity here and ask the board to assume the full weight of all those criticisms. On the other side, you have to weigh the insane housing crisis that we're living through right now. My wife's a physician, I own my own business, and we are struggling to live in Hanover. We also live at Burrell Farms, we rent. I suspect that our rent is double or triple the mortgage of everybody else at Burrell Farms. What we're experiencing is unsustainable for us, but it's impossible for most people. And you're not just responsible for the people in this room, you're responsible for all the people who can't be in this room, who want to be in this room, who want to send their kids to Ray, who need this opportunity. And yes, things are going to go wrong. Zoning issues I'm not smart enough to understand are being discussed here that are so far above my head. But what I know is that the town has a moral and ethical responsibility to everyone, not just the people who are able to come to a meeting at 7 to 9 on a Monday night. So I do hope you consider everything that's being said here and take it to heart and make the plans better, make the options stronger, have a plan with fewer places that it can fail, because if this doesn't work, if we can't get Workforce House to succeed in Hanover, it's not going to succeed in the Upper Valley. This is a very unique opportunity, not just for these 30 that we need, but for the 800 that we need. This has to be a beacon, and we have to get it right. And I think everyone here tonight can help the select board get it right if we take that criticism with the best intentions that it's been offered, but also act with the ambition that this moment demands. If this project fails, let it be because we shot too far and it fell short. But if we build 3 or 4 houses in this area, it's not going to be anything. Sure, it's going to make a difference for the 3 families or 4 families, but you could 10x that. That's 10 more families who are in Hanover, not just to serve Hanover for the people who are here, but to be part of that community. I want a diverse, strong community, not just for today, but myself included. Everyone in this room basically has gray hair. I'm friends with 25-year-olds who can't live here, yes. And it's only getting worse. And and here's the thing, and what I love about this forum is that despite the disagreements here, everybody is working toward the vision of a better Hanover. Sure, there's disagreements about how to get there, but I don't want to lose sight of all the people who don't have a voice in this room because they physically can't be here. And I just hope that when you have so many tough decisions in front of you that I do not envy, but when you're making those decisions, I hope you weigh them towards ambition, that we can do something bigger and better here that still fits within the Greensboro community, within the community of Hanover, and that honors both the need to preserve what makes Hanover exceptional, but that in valuing conservation, we're not conserving a status quo that is woefully unacceptable for what I know this town could be. I'll stop pontificating there, but thank you and good luck to you guys.
Thank you very much.
It's gonna be tough.
Good evening. I never plan to speak when I come to these meetings, but I always find myself here. I'll be brief. My name is Mark Hiller. I'm a resident of town. I plugged on my phone 30 divided by 800, and that is less than 4%. So if you build the maximum amount, we develop 30 units, we are targeting 800. That's a very small percentage. But I say that not to say, well, let's be conservative, but rather if we look at the number of sites that are going to be suitable from a zoning perspective, that have access to sewer and water, there's only so many. And if we're serious about trying to achieve 800, then we can't be conservative each time a particular site comes up. No site is perfect. And so I think being overly conservative where the site meets many of the needs for development is a surefire way to be unsuccessful in achieving our objectives of getting 800 units put together. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sir.
My name is Len Cadwallader. Thank you for having this forum. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I've been a resident of the town of Hanover for 23 years with my family. When we decided to make some remodeling changes to our home, it was shortly after the town had developed an accessory dwelling unit condition, and we decided to add an accessory dwelling unit to our home so that we would be able to increase the supply of housing, despite the fact that it meant that we were going to be a little bit more crowded, that we'd be sharing things like a laundry room with a tenant. We found out that it was a terrific opportunity to get to know somebody who was different from us. It made it different to us. The thing that I want to ask you to do is to have resolve to increase the supply of housing in this town so that other people who are the folks who whether they're changing bedpans at the hospital or helping a first grader learn how to read at the race school, are able to live where they work. This is a town that works together. I can't tell you how many bags of garlic mustard I've picked with Barbara McElroy. I can't tell you how many trails I've helped clear with Rick on Balch Hill. But that's what this community is. It's people working together. And you, as our elected representatives, have a chance to continue to make this a strong place where people can live and work and raise their family from different economic strata. My hope is that this would be permanently affordable. That's something that is going to be worked out, down the road somewhere. I understand it can't be resolved tonight, but please keep in mind that we need the diversity and we need the permanently affordable component so that this just doesn't become a place where just a very, very few people can live in the comfort of a place that's undisturbed. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service to this town.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Hi, Ryan Clausen from Greensboro Road. Just a couple quick points to make. I was watching a select board meeting a couple months ago, and a woman came up and she wanted to talk about housing. She said, housing is the most important issue we have, housing, we need housing. And then she said, now, I'm not saying we should have a homeless shelter here in Hanover, because that would never happen. And she made a joke, and no one said anything about it. The meeting just went on, and I thought it was interesting that the idea of shelter for people who are poor is considered a joke in Hanover. By a citizen, by an elderly woman, thinks that it's so crazy that would ever happen. Workforce housing is still expensive. Workforce housing is still, you need to be rich to afford workforce housing. There used to be, a long time ago, a poor farm in Hanover that was on Dogford Road. There was a poor farm, people lived there, and it was deemed to be successful, and that's gone now. And is there any thought of creative ideas like tiny home villages and things that can really solve a housing crisis? And my last point is, when it says small cluster of homes, everyone does feel lied to and cheated when they then hear small cluster of homes goes to 30. It's I don't think that's right. And just because we need workforce housing, we need more housing, it doesn't mean that every location is the best place for that. There may be other locations that make more sense for housing to be developed. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Others? A lot of folks, please, in the back. There's a lot of people in the back.
Hi, Sean Clausen. Also lived on 104 for 47 years. I was born right when my family moved there. And the whole discussion has me thinking of the poor farm my brother just mentioned. Our house is actually built from the timbers.
No way, really?
From that, yeah. And so for us, it's such a special place. I've been all over those forests. I swim in the Mink Brook across Evansfield almost every day. Take Julia's Trail, fantastic. I actually love what the town has done. It's brilliant, beyond my imagination of what was possible there. Such a privilege to see that field. Oh, it's the way it's being treated, the kiosks. It's just like such a dream. I did not expect that to happen. So grateful that it is. And then one point I just wanted to raise was when we saw the 8 and 9 cottage units, I thought that was perfect. I think that place is so magical, it deserves cottages just to blend in with the feeling of the land itself. But I just want to bring that curve there is I think the bad accidents on that curve, and it's not the safest curve. And so I think when I heard 8 or 9 jumping to 30, my concern was, oh, we're going to have a lot more cars suddenly going in and out of that curve. And I mean, one of my earliest childhood memories was a horrible accident at that curve. So I just wanted to draw the attention to just I love the idea of helping poor people live as easy as possible and enjoy their lives. I'm quite a poor person myself, but I have the luxury of having a mom who lives at 104 Greensboro Road. So I get to come visit whenever I want. But so that was my only point. Just I understand maximizing, making it feasible to do. And then what that looks like is a big open question mark.
So traffic safety is your biggest question?
Yeah, I mean, I walk across that curve every day just going into the field there. And yeah, it's Greensboro Road. We've got a Greensboro Bandit. You guys heard about this? We have someone who revs their car engine and flies up and down the road periodically. So we're just concerned. I mean, we live so close to the road, and it's changed a lot. It used to be way quieter, than it is now. But it's still beautiful. Just the way it's all coming together. It's been beautifully done. That forest is so magical, and Levitt's Field itself is. Every time I walk onto it, like in the morning, I'm just like, wow, it's impressive, really impressive. And then of course, I swim in the brook every day, so just the water quality. I know there's been some issues before with Mink Brook with asphalt weight contamination and so forth. So the community obviously lives right beside the brook. So we're all very interested in clean water. And I think that's a big issue these days is clean water. How do you find it? And when you do find it, how do you enjoy it and make sure that it stays clean? So that's all I would say.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Please.
Hi everyone, my name is John Hafner. I'm not a resident of Hanover, I'm a resident of the town of Hartford, but I also work at Vital Communities on housing. And I just wanted to come to join this conversation today because it's a conversation that in my personal life in my town, we are also having. And it's a conversation that through my work with Vital Communities, I get to witness many other communities having. And they all have their own particular perspectives on it, particular qualities, but lots of similar themes come up and lots of tensions. And it's fun to find other communities working through this because I think it's an incredibly important conversation to have. Just a quick perspective that I want to bring as somebody who's looking at this at the regional level, a thing that I talk about in the context of Grafton County is that according to the New Hampshire Housing Residential Survey that was just released, rents in Grafton County have become the highest in the state of New Hampshire, and they have climbed 80% in the last 5 years. So to bring the perspective of the kind of conversations that I know that this town has been having for a long time, those conversations have changed in terms of the need of what housing is, the imperative to address workforce housing, and I think most importantly is the imperative for towns and communities to have these conversations in the context of an affirmative vision for housing. And I see some inspired by the affirmative vision that's developing here in Hanover, namely the things that I've seen here in Hanover and in other communities is taking advantage of municipal owned land to really emphasize the use of housing and to prioritize housing. So it's great to see that as part of this project, of thinking how the municipality can look at its resources and its land resources to be able to put together towards a workforce housing project. And then I think also the way that you are challenging the dominant paradigm that housing development and conservation are inherently at odds together, because I think that this region will never be able to address the housing crisis if we constantly put these things against each other as if it's some kind of zero-sum game. So finding a way to at least frame the workforce housing issue within the context of conservation and figuring out how those two mutual goals can be, I think, mutually achieved. So thank you for letting me invade the select board meeting as a resident of the town of Hartford, but I love and appreciate the conversation.
Much appreciated. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Jim.
Other folks? I'm sorry, I missed, I turned my eyes away, thank you.
I'm Cheryl Abbott. I'm a nurse at DH. I live at 86 Greensboro Road. I've been very encouraged recently to see the modest expansion in the services of the Advanced Transit Public Transport Network. And, I'm really here just to learn about this particular project tonight, but to the extent that I wasn't aware of it, certainly would hope that it might be accompanied by some investigation of having a route that would cover perhaps, a route kind of from the Great Hall Road area and then up Greensboro, scheduled at least a couple of times a day. It seems like that would be advantageous to the population that we're trying to serve here. There is a bus stop on, on 120 at Buck Road, that it's about a mile and a quarter from 110 Greensboro, and it's really hard to make that walk sometimes during rush hour, and especially in work clothes. So just as this moves forward, I would ask that we consider including some transportation.
You raise a really good point, and the master plan does talk about transportation in pretty good depth. I'm not.
That's transit as well as, so Greensboro Road is a state highway.
Right.
And I think we've discussed at this board in the past, what are the opportunities for that to, become a town road, for example, and so the town could invest it, if the community so chooses, in infrastructure to make it safer to walk and bike and have, mobility options, which we don't currently have on that street. So I think that's talked about in the master plan, and personally, I think it's an important commitment in terms of infrastructure the town could be exploring, figure out how to pay for it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just have one more quick
Jeff.
one. Somebody texted me who's watching at home and they wanted me to ask.
Please.
So
can they hear us?
Anybody we know?
Well, they can hear you.
They can hear me.
Can they hear the rest of
So
it?
what happens if the zoning board turns this down and nobody knows what would happen if the zoning board turns this down, but what I would ask is that in your agreement with Twin Pines, you contemplate some unwinding if it doesn't work, so that the property isn't just in limbo forever, because that's actually how we ended up here, was because the Levitts let Paragon hold the property in limbo forever.
Yep.
Which, fortunate for all of us in the end, but here we are. But so there should be, the deed restriction would still be there, but if you don't have a Twin Pines developer who can get a project approved, how do you unwind this thing? And so that should be part of your discussion and part of your agreement is, how do we divorce at the end if we have to?
Thank you.
So that was my thought. Thanks.
Sandy hasn't come.
Please.
I think that people with white or gray hair have to be represented here, so I can't resist this. Sandra Ho, I now live at Kendall, but I lived at Willow Spring Circle, right above Girl Brook Trail, and first of all, I've never lived any place, and there are many years here, where I could go hiking any place. I have hiked on the land that you refer to numerous times, and more recently a friend of mine went up, and I went up and looked at the site you're looking at. When I first moved back to Hanover, I heard we couldn't do Guile project because we can't take those trees down. It's conservation versus housing. It is not. We have a huge need, and it's the same thing all over this country. It's not just here. We need housing. 29, I'd like a heck of a lot more. I don't mean on your side. But we need a lot more. 29 is more than 0. I just feel passionately about it, that we have to do this. It can't, and I haven't heard NIMBY, which I'm delighted, but we have to do it, and if we put this down, I don't know when you're gonna get another site. So I plead with you to please consider this positively.
Thank you, Sandra. Excuse me, other folks, please, John.
Hi, just briefly, John Donovan, I'm on the Conservation Commission. My question is, if we need any other units, where's the vision plan for the future for this? And I urge you to basically step back. This is the only show in town right now, from what I gather. And I also gather, I think, when I said in some of the meetings with Joanna, that you had a workforce housing in 2008, and nothing was done. So the can has been kicked down the road. The reason for that is you need a long-range vision plan, which could include upzoning and other options, besides just being the only show in town. So I really think that's an important consideration. I know Alex, I've talked to him some, and it's a problem amongst our community. Our community is Hanover, but it's also Lebanon, Hartford, and if you could come up with a plan with those towns, it doesn't matter where it is. It matters where it is in terms of where people could come and work from those parts. And there are many people low cost that, when there's a poor farm here, they could go and work in the woods. They put people to work, they did it, they sowed, but you know, people here, it's hard for them to shop. They're gonna have to go somewhere else to use the resources. But I think that long-range vision is really important for not only, you know, Hanover, but for the community at large here. I think Alex agrees too. So.
I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, John. Other folks?
I just want to speak to that. Just, you know, the master plan will be is up on the website for feedback. Those are the long-range plans that the town has been, you know, soliciting feedback for. And so the Sustainability Master Plan Committee will have them on display at the Howe Library on the 18th and 19th. I encourage you all to stop by and ask your questions and give feedback.
Thank you, Jenny. Your point about having been here before and not really, and this is where we are right now, is well taken, which I think is the heart of it. Young man in the corner.
I rise to speak as Rob Hausman, resident of Hanover, 3 Great Hollow Road, in your neighborhood, in this neighborhood. I make that point because this is my neighborhood. I've lived there 7 years. I'm passionate about the neighborhood. It's a lovely place. I enjoy all the recreational opportunities, the conserved land, far field, the land behind Hypertherm, now Mink Brook Community Forest, Old Highway 38, all of the Hudson Farm, the Prescott lands, the Appalachian Trail. These are critical holdings, and we all benefit from them. I just want to comment that as an employee of the town, 4 of my 5 employees would qualify for this housing. There are 5 of us who live, 5 employees of the town of Hanover currently who live in the town of Hanover.
Out of 100
yeah, 140-ish.
Yeah.
How many live in the town of Hanover?
5.
Yeah.
My point is simply, we need to move the needle. The master plan lays out the groundwork. The zoning amendments that will be forthcoming, hopefully, will help encourage those properties on sewer and water to be developed in a timely fashion. We've heard the Dartmouth College commitment for 1,000 beds, a portion of which will not be student beds, which is an excellent way to move the needle. But also the student beds will help us move other housing stock into the rental market. I think all of these play together, but as a resident in this neighborhood, I just wanted to let you know I'm very appreciative of your efforts.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Thank you, Ron. You've been on the hot seat so many times tonight. I apologize for putting you there. Other folks? Looks like nobody's gonna jump at the opportunity. It's 9:34. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for turning out tonight. And not only, and as I said at the beginning, we have received, I'd say, a couple dozen comments, maybe that's generous, maybe 15 comments from folks who were not able to attend, reflecting a lot of the same ideas and some other ideas as well, which the board has reviewed. I think the process has been outlined by Rob and others that we will are continuing to negotiate in a non-public session with regards to the options and issues which we are implementing or negotiating with the developer with respect to this process. And the purpose of tonight was really to consolidate and put together a lot of feedback from the community, and we certainly have received that. I think the whole board, I'll just speak for the board without speaking to them, that we really appreciate your attendance and willingness to speak from the heart. Anybody else on the board want to say anything before we move on to our next agenda item, which I have to get my agenda for? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll take a minute here to there's some really exciting stuff coming up. As you're welcome.
Feel free to stay, please. Always like a crowd.
Take your time, though. We're just going to pause for a second.
You know how to reach me, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I really.
You graduated from
Thanks for coming.
Sure did. And my son did too, and he just loved it. Oh, a long time ago.
It can't be that long. It's not been around.
Well, so he's 51 now, so you can do the math. Yeah. But he just loved it.
I loved it too.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Careful.
Auto mechanics in the market.
Just see why you were trapped.
Oh, that's cool.
It was actually, what I wanted to say was, it's great to have such diversity.
I thought about living in the area there. I'm glad I put it here.
Yeah.
But it was just great with the other schools in the area.
Are you guys gonna make Hanover your?
I don't know if they still do the div one, div two,
Oh, they sure do.
So he loves that part of it too.
I am
business.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you.
If it works, it works.
Thank you.
You know, a lot of folks who
Thanks,
kind of
Rob.
drop out the first year.
It turned out that he ended up being a but he has a foundation under him.
Well, it builds a lot of, I mean, I do speak like what I'm saying, so, you know,
Oh, we were
people come after other undergraduate programs where they don't have to do it all themselves. It's just a totally different skill set. Because if you choose to go to Hampshire, nobody's gonna help you. You've gotta get your own faculty. You've gotta, I mean, I remember doing my Div 3 and I was, you know, getting my faculty to meet up. I was like, I gotta get this done. It's just a very different experience. It's super college.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so we were so thrilled, my son is super happy every day. Nothing new. It's just tough to actually get
Every unit counts.
to be a part of it. So we have to root for total American economic.
Probably a lot. We'll wait for you.
What are the, sure, yeah.
Maybe not. So what's happening? I think
That's what I
This one's just whether we receive it.
Are we getting more? Thanks for coming.
Is this all over?
We
Yes,
have a few, the Mink stuff is over.
Very small world thing. Alex used to be the mayor of my town.
That's funny.
You're in New Jersey?
Yeah, so when I found about all this, I go, I know that.
Do you mind?
And so I think I moved here. You've been here what?
Yes, I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I moved here at the same time.
What is your wife group? She said.
She's an OG at DH. So we were in Chicago for 2 years. Emily Donnelly.
And this is an
Yeah.
This is where I'm stopping.
He's an anesthesiologist.
Are you in the Brook pavilion another one? Never. You don't deal with the anesthesia? You don't like that? It takes a special kind of.
Nice to see you.
Alright, well, thank you guys so much for your time. This is really informative.
Well, I went to that housing thing, and that was a lot of reasons.
You were.
Yeah, we are.
People were talking
We're
about
just
you all
waiting.
night
We
long.
can
You're just
start.
this-
You're famous, Barbara.
You're famous, Barbara.
Well, my hearing's
every
so
time
bad, I didn't hear anything.
We were talking about invasives, you didn't hear that?
And pollinators.
Not weeds and pollinators and they were just.
Thanks for coming. We'll see you later.
So I'll just send these on.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, we just gotta wait for Alex.
Can we start with them?
No, we should wait.
Okay.
Is he talking with, can you see, is he talking with people?
I think he just said.
We could go to the minutes. That's something we could do.
Okay.
Actually, we could, without Alex,
we
we
can
could go
approve
to the
minutes.
minutes of October 6th,
Yes.
which I need to call up. Oh, heck. Oh. Where'd it go? Other people are being faster than I am.
I know I read that it did have any additions, corrections.
Does anyone have any additions or corrections to the minutes of October 9th?
I'm calling them, sorry. I just have to double check.
Yeah, me too.
Because it came a while ago.
Yeah.
What day did we get the email? Does anybody remember? Can you find it?
I'm looking.
It's not in the packet.
Yeah, it's a separate, yeah.
No, was it in last week's packet?
October 6th? Wasn't last week October 6th?
Yeah.
No, October
Well, it says
9th.
approval of October 9th, tabled until November 6th. I'm not sure what that means.
Deferred to November 6th, so
So are we?
we don't have them. I mean, I never even looked at them.
I don't think we got them.
I don't think we
But
got
I
them.
was just checking, because.
Alex, we tried to find something we could do without you being in the room. We looked for the minutes of October 9th, which I don't remember looking at. And do other people?
Well, it says on the agenda postponed till November 6th.
Yeah, I don't think,
so
yeah, I didn't send
probably
those
not
out,
done. Yeah.
so,
So we're gonna have to table it again.
yeah.
Okay, we're gonna table that again. Woo, see, we
October
did-
9th only happened last week, so we aren't tabling.
Oh.
Yeah.
We just don't have them in our packet, right? Is it today the 16th? That's
Yeah.
7 days ago.
It was last week. and I
Oh, it's tabled until November 6th meeting.
Carrie was on vacation.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna do probably both of these at the next meeting.
Can you tell it's late in the night?
I do know how to read, I assure you.
No, we've all just been.
That was just on TV, oh my gosh.
All right, Alex, may we go to the reclassification of sustainability director job position, please?
Okay, so the job description is included in the packet. That is the rewrite. Did a little bit of sort of stakeholder surveying and discussion, and with a couple things that have changed recently, including the hiring of the CPC&H CEO and the sort of build out of that organization, a little bit less.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, like
Sorry?
all the acronyms, what are you talking about?
Oh, sorry.
Like what plan do you want?
The Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire
Thank
hiring
you.
a chief executive officer.
Exactly.
Recently. That has taken some of the burden off of the shoulders of Hanover that was really doing a lot of the work for the Community Power Program, and our sustainability director was doing a lot of that work as well. So the position was created really to get that program up to speed as part of the meeting the Ready for 100 goals. And where we're at right now is a slightly different thing. So we reevaluated that position, and this will allow us to pursue a little bit more of a diverse sustainability agenda. There's some kind of exciting food waste stuff, if you're into that, which I am, that are coming down the pipeline pretty soon. And there'll be a couple other programs. So basically it's taking a part-time remote position and turning it into a full-time in-person position, with some change of the responsibilities that are in the job description. Happy to answer any questions. If not, and I should also say that, perhaps implied in my previous statement, but should outright make sure to say that our current sustainability director has done tremendous work in the role in working with Sustainable Hanover and working with Rob and working with Pete in getting the community power program to where it is. Yeah. And we're just sort of at this inflection point of looking at a slightly different future.
Could I ask a question? Is it fair to say that this job description is quite different than the
existing
role of the existing person and the responsibilities, focus, etc.?
I would say pretty different, maybe one notch below quite different, but it's substantially different.
Substantially different.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So the question I have is whether we should consider this, because this almost seems like a new hire, and should it be considered in light of the budget discussion? And I mean, I wouldn't say it's a new position, but it's a kind of a new position. I mean, we're kind of getting rid of one position and bringing in another. So should the discussion be concurrent with budget priorities, this hire in the context of budget priorities, and other, just in terms of making priority decision making?
I don't think it's that different. I think this is, I wouldn't put it in the category of being that different. And personally, I would recommend not going down that road. I think that there's not a lot to gain there. The money that we have budgeted for the position pays for the position as it's been rewritten. So we don't need to, obviously we couldn't do something that required additional money that we didn't have budgeted for. We are definitely in need on some sustainability issues, and having this position rewritten this way also frees up a little bit of a few other department heads' time, Rob, Pete, to do other things that they really need to be doing right now also. So I would say that this is definitely not urgent, but not something that I would recommend, waiting until July 1st to do.
Or another way to say it, I mean, well, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, I'm not suggesting not do it, but and I find approving the revised job description, but in terms of making the hire, I guess the question would be, should we sort of do that in conjunction, approve the hire in conjunction with the November 6th prioritization of, I think it's important, but I think you said it was substantially different. So maybe we think about it in terms of, there may be other things that are also high priority, and we can't do everything. So,
but that's a conversation for next year's budget, not this year. I mean, this is
already budgeted.
Yeah.
So the one thing I would add to that is just in terms of, I don't remember a lot of things, but I do remember when we created this position, and we used percent funds to start it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, at the time, the percent fund policy was, you have 3 years to decide, it was a program or a new position, but then it had to be self-sustaining, or you had to add the position. So that, my understanding is, this sustainability coordinator has been in this role for a significant amount of time. Do you know how long she's been here?
3 or 4 years, maybe? 4 years?
4 years? 4 years. So it went from a Brissette funded position to budget funded, embedded in the budget. So
Right, more
I just
than.
wanted to provide some, that's what happens. It did not happen when we did the Howe project with the Percent funds.
It dissolved, that position.
What it was.
Dissolved.
Well, COVID
yes.
pretty much
Right.
did that.
And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, I'm just saying that, I know that I get that the cost is kind of grandfathered, but it's a little different, and, we may have 5 other priorities, and should we just wait, before you make the hire, not change the job description, should we think about if there's other competing things, and maybe the answer is no, there aren't, and we should make this hire, that's fine, but, so.
Well, Alex, I mean, you kind of were talking about that. If we don't have someone in this position, I mean, how does that negatively affect the town functions?
There's a couple things. So one is that it's going to require more time of existing department heads who I really need to get their time allocated on other things other than doing things such as staffing Sustainable Hanover, and things of that nature. So there's a whole bunch of things that we really need to reshuffle some things around. So that would definitely be a negative there. We would also not make progress in some of the sustainability initiatives that we want to start moving forward on. But also, I mean, we're not going to hire somebody before November 6th anyway. There's just no, there's no way that we're going to do that. But also, November 6th really isn't about this year. And so that's all stuff, stuff looking at, July 1 of next year.
But it will inform how we think about, if you're bringing forth in the November 6th budget 6 new positions because you've identified all these priorities, we may say, well, maybe we don't have a sustainability coordinator, or maybe we do and those 6 positions don't happen. So I guess I'm kind of in accord with you, Carrie. But, as you said, you're not going to hire the position anyway, but you may list it, so.
Yeah, it'll take us, 1 to 2 months to even do, it'll take us a week or 2 to post it, and then, 2 to 4 weeks for accepting a resume. So we're way past November 6th anyway. I don't think anything's going to change from that conversation, but it's certainly possible.
I think it's important to do the what's the word you're using? Reclassification. Sorry, I couldn't remember that word. Definitely.
And I could. This will be an easy promise to keep. To not fill that position before November 6th.
Okay. So
I'm not even convinced that.
But it's not. Yeah, we can't move that fast anyway. But
yeah,
don't need one.
Yeah, I think we can talk.
Well, okay, so Nancy, well, go ahead, why don't you say that?
I agree with Carrie that I don't believe that we need the position filled, and I'd like to see. I'm now on Sustainable Hanover. I seem to be chugging along pretty successfully.
that's not my impression. We built this position by me soliciting feedback from stakeholders, including the Sustainable Hanover co-chairs. So we desperately need somebody in this position.
Okay.
Yeah. That much I'm fairly confident about.
It's important. Well, the options, I guess, are to reclassify or eliminate. Why don't we?
No.
And I just want to, I know Nancy, you said you're certainly in accord with me, the positions I need, and I don't think I quite said that. I think I said we should just revisit the issue, November 6th, in light of other priorities. It might be something, or there might not be. We might say this is absolutely the way to go, but I just know that there's going to be competing demands for dollars, and we just need to weigh options.
Absolutely.
But we're not really doing that on November 6th isn't looking at current staffing levels.
It's looking at next year, but
right.
next, if we bring in a new person, which we might, it might be discretionary. Perhaps if we decide that we're kind of in trouble for next year, we might say, you know what, let's hold off on making this hire, because it will create capacity for next year financially if you don't have this position filled.
But the timing there is, I'm not sure it all lines up, right? The select board's not going to be considering the budget until March.
But if you've hired someone, then that will be on the payroll for all of fiscal 2025.
But so is the suggestion that we don't change this position until March?
No, it's that when we get a preview of our budget on November 6th and we look at competing priorities, we might have a better sense of whether to greenlight this position or table it.
We're not really getting that level. We're not getting into account lines on November 6th.
No, but we'll have a sense of what the tax rate, we're going to discuss the tax rate increase, I believe. I think that was what I heard. So, and if we put some body English around the numbers, we may realize that we are looking at a very big increase, or maybe not. Maybe we'll be like, this is totally fine. I'm just saying that a preview of what are the competing forces for next year's budget might inform whether we greenlight this position. That's all.
Yeah, but okay.
With respect to the current, what I'm uncomfortable with is leaving the job description as is.
No, he's not saying that.
I'm not saying that.
He's saying do it.
Change the job description.
Okay.
But don't hire the person.
Don't do the
Fair enough.
posting, don't do the posting, don't post a job.
Well, I'd like to post it, but you're saying don't fill the position before November 6th. Which is not gonna happen anyway.
A little awkward maybe to post and then.
Well, but we can't fill the position in 3 weeks. So we could post it tonight and we still wouldn't have somebody ready to be hired by November 6th.
I suggest we go with this motion, and then we basically have enough time.
Yeah, if I'm understanding, you want to have a conversation.
Right.
Like in context of knowing some other baseline information about the budget and priorities.
Yes.
And we also know that personnel is the largest single line in our budget. So if there's any place to be able to work around, and we also know that so many of the personnel costs are baked in because of our union contracts and so forth. This is a cost that's not baked in.
May not be next year, it's baked in this year.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you need a motion to
Yeah, we need a motion.
reclassify, to approve the new position description for sustainability
As presented.
as presented, sustainability
And I will second the motion.
Okay.
director?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So now, that was the easy one. Ellen and Alex, we're addressing now the MS 535, the financial report of the budget. I'm trying to.
Yeah. And my suggestion is we kind of do both at the same time a little bit, just because they're semi-related. And before Ellen takes over, I just wanted to mention that taking both these documents to the select board and having a conversation about them, especially the 434, is a new process that we would like to do to make sure that you all this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as the amount of financial reporting and data that we want to make sure goes in front of the select board going forward, that hasn't in the past. And so both of these are important. And in the past, last year, I'm not sure if folks remember, but there was a little hiccup when when the state was setting our tax rate. And it was because the 434, for some reason, the way that the state has it set up, the 535 requires the select board signatures. The 434 only requires the finance director to submit it. So, for example, when that was submitted last year, I wasn't aware that revenues had been adjusted. The select board wasn't aware revenues had been adjusted, and that created a little bit of a tricky situation when the state got to tax rate setting time. And I remember it well because I was down at the NHMA conference and we were trying to figure it out remotely. And so as we go through this, we're going to just try and make sure everybody's kind of fully up to speed on what the different forms are and what they mean. But please don't hesitate to interject or ask questions or talk to me or Ellen on the side if we're not presenting something in a way that's clear or anything like that, because this is sort of a new set of things. And so with that disclaimer.
Thank you, and apparently finance and accounting scared everyone.
Yeah.
But I will do my best to actually move through this succinctly to highlight the information that I think will put you in a position to sign the 535 and have a good conversation about the 434. So I'm going to hold off. I'm going to talk about, as Alex said, about the 535. Then I'll move on to the 434, and then if agreed, then I'll circulate the 535 for signature. So in my memos, I did try to frame sort of, what piece of the puzzle each of these reports or forms, where they fit, both in the evaluation of how the town performed in fiscal year 2023 and how that then impacts the tax rate setting for tax year 2023 and for the budget for fiscal year 2024. And really, if I look at 2023, fiscal year 2023 as reflected in the MS 535, there were a lot of changes. There were differences in the revenue. There were differences in the expenditures. I did some of the analysis and do need to sharpen my pencil on pieces of that. But in the end, the biggest drivers of the change that I saw really came from the change in our overlay and abatement expenses that were incurred in 2023. And that's not fully reflected in the memo. One of the things that I did mention in the memo for 2023 was the difference in the revenue associated with the Reset Fund. Kari Asmus has been so helpful to me, and she did point out that in the budget that was actually submitted to the state, that the Reset funds were not double counted. So I did go back and take a look. The bottom line and the most important piece in my view from this 535 gives us a look at where we ended fiscal year 2023 in the unassigned or undesignated fund balance. Where we ended 2023 was with an undesignated fund balance of $2,787,000. And if you were referring to the MS 535, that can be found on page 8 of 10, and it's really on the bottom line. So how does that compare to the conversation that we had when we presented the fiscal year 2024 budget? That number is about $460,000 lower than the $3.2 million that we felt that we would close fiscal year 2023 with.
Ellen, wait, I'm sorry, I'm not with you.
Okay.
Can you show me that again?
Sure. The raw number is at the bottom of page 8 out of 10 on the MS 535. And you can see it's noted as the DRA account is 2530.
Okay.
And the ending balance that we had is the $2,787,781.
Okay.
Sort of for further context for this report, this is prepared by our audit firm, and our lead auditor, Kyle, did prepare this and submit it based on data that we provided out of our financial system. So it is based on the audited financial statements to the point where they are today. The audit for 2023 is not final.
Okay.
And just conceptually, how do we think about, because I think some of the revenue things came in way better. So just conceptually, how do we wrap our heads around, but we have less money at the end of the year, even though some of those revenue things came in way better.
Right, so some of the revenue came in better. and others came in below.
Okay.
And some of those that came in below were offset by lower offsetting expenditures. Really, the major driver to the overall revenue difference is in the DPW highway budget, where they had $1,057,000 of revenue for outside projects that was 100% offset in expenditures, and neither one of those you'll see occurring in the fiscal year 2023 financials. But the biggest driver in looking at everything overall was the fact that we requested $250,000 for the overlay, and the actual overlay came in at, what would that be? Sorry, I have to take a look, so. The actual overlay came in at about $710,000.
And reminder, overlay is the assessment relief?
It is, and the abatements, and again, it's quite complex, and I need to lay it out more clearly, but one of the things that is impacting this year's performance is carryover from some of the Dartmouth abatements that happened last year. There was also at the end of last year a reserve that was put on our books in the wrong direction. And so about $120,000 of this impact is out of the audit and a correction that happened in the audit.
Ellen, what is this in percent of the total? What's the undesignated fund balance sitting at with this correction?
Sure, with this correction, that would put us at 16.7%. And so, just as a reminder, the Select Board approved policy is that for the general fund, it fall between 10 and 15%.
I didn't know it was that high, okay.
So 16.7.
Correct, at the end of 2023.
Okay.
And the reason why it's an important follow-on conversation then, in a minute I'll switch to the 434, is because we, in our budget, we did approve the use of undesignated fund balance of $515,830. And with no other changes, with that use of fund balance at the end of 2024, we would forecast that percentage to go to about 14.75. So, still within the 10 to 15, but, I think at least as I'm gaining my body of knowledge, that 15% feels like an important threshold that we want to monitor.
What was the amount we were using again? I just forgot, I slept it.
Oh, for 2024 is $515,830. And 50 cents, no.
29 cents. Okay. 14.7%?
14.75.
Are there two ways to calculate the percentage, the state way and the Hanover way? Is that right?
There is, and
Okay.
I have to say that this is the Hanover way.
This is the Hanover way, okay.
But as the state goes through the process of setting our tax year 2023 tax rate, they will take their calculation into account. I'm not fully familiar with the process enough to know sort of how all those elements come together, but.
So Ellen, what? Basically, we are being asked to simply accept this, correct? and sign it.
For the 535, yes, and my recommendation to do that is based on the fact that it was, constructed by our auditors.
Yep.
That is, that with, your signature, then this moves on to and becomes part of the tax year 2023 tax rate setting process. It doesn't mean that if, as we continue through the last steps of the audit, if something changes, that won't be reflected in our final audited statements.
Okay.
And I think that's an important distinction.
Okay, that is important, thank you.
So.
Is there anything else you'd like to discuss on this?
Not on the 535.
All right, so should we, when we do, I know the 434 is more complicated.
Well, actually, I don't think it is.
My question is, should we just move on this?
Do you want to take a vote?
Sure.
Let's just.
Move to accept the MS 535 as presented.
So second.
Any discussion? Further discussion, I should say. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now the 434, explain this one to us, please.
Sure, and I'll circulate that for signature. So if the 535 is a backward look and taking a look at where we sort of landed with fiscal year 2023, the 434 is an opportunity for us to make any adjustments to our estimated revenues for fiscal year 2024. And to have those adjustments of revenues taken into account in the tax rate setting process. So once town meeting votes on the appropriations side of the budget, we can't make changes to that. I mean, there are some extreme situations, but this is, as we approach the tax year 2023 rate setting process, we do have an opportunity to take a look at how we estimated our revenues for fiscal year 2024. And, this is my first time through this process, so I did talk to a couple other finance directors and to our consultant who had been consulting for us and now just is very helpful to me. And, the recommendation really is to take a look at those large revenue areas, and we have a handful outside of our property tax in the general fund. And so the two that I looked at and felt that really should be adjusted for fiscal year 2024 were our building permits and fees, and that based on input from Rob, would like to make a change in that revenue to increase it by roughly $222,000. That would be from the interesting amount that we have in there of $528,125 to $750,000. And then the second recommendation that I had was our interest on investments. I think when we set the budget, we were just sort of cycling through and really starting to realize what it looks like when we're earning 5.5% on our excess funds. And so at this point, I took a look at where we are year to date, where we ended fiscal year 2023, and making the recommendation that we increase that revenue line by $150,000, and that would move it to $400,000. And just to give you context for fiscal year 2023, we did end the year with about $445,000 in that interest. So between the two revisions, we would have additional revenue of roughly $395,000. Questions on that?
In terms of that additional money from the permits, how confident are we of that additional, because that's $250,000, right?
It is. I felt with guidance from Rob in that confidence, but I welcome any comments that he might like to make.
I mean, all you have to say is, I see it coming, and that's where you're getting, that's fine, but
Given
I'm
what we're
interested.
seeing in our office for applicant reviews and development schedules, I expect the permitting to come in as proposed.
Okay.
So this is just revising the estimate, it's not
Yes.
revising
actuals,
the fees?
Correct.
And on the interest, you said last year was.
Thanks, Rob.
445. Thank you, Rob.
Correct.
So, and you're bumping it up to 400, so that might be conservative maybe, unless you think interest rates are going down. Is it fair to say it might be conservative?
I think it's very fair to say that it may be conservative.
Fine,
Yeah.
right, yeah, okay.
So Ellen, this is something that basically you sign off on yourself, correct?
I do.
And we all appreciate you bringing it to us, because it's gonna have a big impact on discussions going forward. When do we need, what, everybody's like me.
And it has an immediate impact on it, there's a decision to be made
Yes.
about, does it go
Right.
to lower taxes
Right.
or not, right? So,
And I think in my memo, I kind of went in the direction, I think with seeing what was coming out of the 535 and knowing that we headed into fiscal year 2024 at a lower starting point than where we had anticipated. And if we did use the full 515 plus, that we would end up with a undesignated fund balance of that 14.75. I leapt ahead to thinking that that it's in the town's best interest to reduce the use of the undesignated fund balance and to use these additional revenues in that way. However, I think it's important to have the conversation and frame what the impact would be on the tax rate if instead we continue to plan to draw the 515,000 from the undesignated fund balance and instead used this 395,000 to reduce the taxes, the property taxes for tax year 2023. So I'm happy to walk through that.
So the 23,184, what does that do to our undesignated fund balance? Does that keep it at 14.75 or does it keep it at 16.7 or 15?
So if we were to reduce the usage of the undesignated fund balance, the percentage would go to 15.5%.
Okay.
So, but I do think it's important to understand, just so you have the full context for what you want to consider, for our tax rates. Our initial forecast was that the property taxes would be $4.42 per thousand, or a 6.51% increase over tax year 2022. We have had, and I know you had the opportunity for the MS1, we've had about a $4.5 million increase in our net assessed value. So taking that into account, just with the change in the net assessed value, Our tax rate would go down to $4.41 per thousand, which is a 6.27% increase over the previous year. And that's where if we took this additional revenue and reduced our use of fund balance, that's where at least my estimate of where we would land would be. If instead we used the $395,000 to reduce the tax burden, then the tax rate would go to $4.28 per thousand, and the tax increase over the previous year would be about 3.13% increase. So what does that mean on a roughly $500,000 home? Our tax increase, if we were to use this to reduce our use of fund balance, would be about $130 increase for the year. If we use this instead to reduce the tax burden, it would be about $65. So on average, well, for a $500,000 home, it's a difference of $65 between the two options. And, you know, I think that there is still, there are still some sharpening of our processes that we need to make in our finance and accounting management of the town. And I think, from my perspective, that it is in the town's interest, and as a taxpayer in the town, this is my perspective, that we use this to reduce the use of undesignated fund balance, but I'm here for your input and discussion.
Ellen, my only question
Yeah.
is, what do we see coming down the road with regards to upcoming fiscal year and need for undesignated fund balance?
So if you're talking about 2025,
Yeah.
I will fully admit that I'm not there yet, but I have started to do, you know, some reading, some looking at what other towns are thinking about for cost of living. You know, I suppose if I had a crystal ball, I'd be investing instead of sitting here. But so, you know, I think that, you know, it will continue to be challenging to burden, you know, our tax base with the increases that we might see. So to have the additional undesignated fund balance, I think, is prudent.
I'm looking to you, Carrie.
The bottom line of what you just said was it's prudent to
use the additional revenue to reduce our use of fund balance.
Okay.
Which would leave more on deposit at the end of the year.
Keep the money, that's right. No, I mean, I think there's enough uncertainty about next year. I mean, what it positions us to, if we have other unforeseen increases, it allows us to buffer those next year. So I think that taxpayers ultimately benefit, but, you know, not immediately, but yeah.
Our undesignated fund balance policy, we look at it every year, is to how quickly, I think we have a couple of years built in there, basically, meaning if we have a surplus, then we're supposed to return it, our policy is to return it over 2 to 3 years, as I recall, so that we don't necessarily burden current taxpayers. Am I saying that appropriately? Anybody remember off the top of their head? I think that's right. So that's in line with what you're saying, Carrie and Ellen.
Yeah, I guess I'm unfamiliar with the 2 to 3 year policy, but I mean, this would put us to 15.5%. I mean, that is slightly above the threshold.
It is.
But not
a lot.
I was gonna say not egregiously so.
We've been higher, as I recall.
Yeah.
Yes, we have. We've been lower too, by the way. Okay.
So you need a motion? No, you're just gonna
No,
go
it's
ahead and
her-
do it.
yeah, she doesn't
And
need a
we give
motion.
you, we
I think if you wanted to do something different than what Ellen and and I were proposing,
Yeah.
then it would be prudent to sort of go and put that direction.
Good, thank you.
Any further discussion, guys? Board?
Thanks for bringing it to us.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Well, we'll do.
And we need to sign that other one, right? The
Yes, I'm gonna
535?
pass it around. Am I allowed to?
Yeah.
Yeah. While Ellen's doing that, can we
Ellen, I
just,
had just one question about that 530, like why are the property assessments like 0 in the estimated? For the 535? That was like my only question.
And which page is that?
It's on the first page of the 535.
Oh, the, on the first, so on page 2 of 10, or are you on the revenue?
In the revenue.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. The revenue.
I don't have a good answer for that, Jenny. It's a very fair question. And I do know that down below at the bottom, you can see at the bottom of page 7, you'll see the
it's just
plus
added in
property
there.
tax.
Okay.
So that's
where it
I'm
is.
not sure. I think it has to do with something about the difference between the fiscal year and the tax year, the way it's presented. But it's additional knowledge that
well, Ellen is doing this, can I just, I know we're like way beyond our bedtime, or my bedtime, but I just crossed my mind, so we're changing this, I know we've already approved it, but we're changing the position description for the sustainability person. We're changing what's in there, and we're taking it from being a director that works part-time remote to full-time, making the same, having no budget impact. Why is it a director position? Why isn't it like a sustainability coordinator position? Is this person gonna report to you?
No, they're gonna report to Rob. We kept the director title because we didn't want to in any way indicate to the community that we were lessening the sort of impact of
Community's
the...
not that, they don't care. I mean, I think
Yeah.
so I guess I'm just wondering, a director
of Public Works and director of planning.
and
So our titles are all over the place, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't get too worried about that right now. If we need to do an update of titles, which we're gonna do for probably a bunch of positions next year, as we finish the study, we're gonna do that. But there's no consistency within the organization about titles currently.
But do you have a director reporting to a director?
We have all sorts of crazy stuff happening. And so
But
I would
I'm
say that the
saying-
titles just
Is
aren't.
this an opportunity for us to start in one corner of the world to clean things up?
Maybe, I mean, I would say at this point, my recommendation would be to not worry about it too much, and when we wanna update more titles, we're gonna reclassify the entire organization in a couple of
But you're
months.
not gonna take someone that you hire as a director of sustainability and say, oh, sorry, we're gonna change your
We
title
would,
to.
yeah, for sure, that's for
You're not
sure.
gonna- you're not gonna
Because
be
we're
able
gonna
to
be
do that.
changing a bunch of titles of people who currently work
Sorry,
here.
who does this person report to?
They're gonna report to Rob.
And Rob is the director of the Office of Planning.
No,
Anyway.
It's
I don't know,
It's a
it's
much
just-
longer
it's-
title than that.
Planning,
It's got a lot of words.
Planning, zoning, and code.
Yeah, it's got all the words.
Yeah.
I mean, I would agree with Joanna. I think it's a little weird if they're not actually reporting to you.
I don't know,
Let's
it's
move
just,
on.
we didn't,
Let's move on. We got a lot to cover. We can clean that up for some of the time.
It would be nice to have an org chart. I feel like we used to have an org chart.
Yeah,
on the.
there has been.
We'll have that for next year.
Yeah, so it's not on there now, right? Or if
No,
it
it
is, I
isn't.
can't find it.
It would be nice to have. We've had that.
Yeah.
We have had that. Let's go to the consent agenda. There are two things on it. There is a donation to the there are donations to the Etna Library, and there's a recommendation to set public hearing on Monday, November 6th, 2023 to correct the current rates and fee schedules. Schedule, town parking garage, short-term rates, 4th hour from $3 to $1. I move that we approve the consent agenda. Whew, it's hard for me to say. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? I guess we're losing steam. I do want to read out the donations to the Etna Library. Where are they? Heck. I'm sorry, I don't have them in front of me.
Do you want me to? I got them right.
Please, please.
So we have Lynn Howard to the Etna Library. Oh, that's it.
Wonderful. We really appreciate that donation. Thank you very much.
Can I ask one question? Having just ignored that question about the title for the person, is this job then going to be posted like in a couple of days as the director of? Are you going to use the term director when you're posting it?
Probably, but probably not this week.
Can there be any discussion or consideration of our concerns?
Let's take that up. Sorry, I'm trying to just move this along.
I'm tired.
I mean, to me, we have a pay scale written down for this position, which is, I think, distinct from department heads, for example. So, for me, that was the biggest differentiator. The title meant less to me than did the job responsibility and to whom the person is reporting. So I didn't see a major issue one way or the other. I understand titles are important. Coordinator really fits this job very well. I don't know. Alex, do you feel that this is
Can't live with coordinator?
No, I think there's minimal value. I mean, there's 100 other titles that need to be redone, and so that's really the sort of, I guess, point from my perspective. We looked at director, looked at coordinator, doesn't make a huge difference at the end of the day. The more important thing is grading and classifying and managing the position correctly, which was not being done before. So that's the real important piece.
So how would you feel about town manager 2, where the job, instead of getting your salary, we had another town manager in here? I mean,
Not sure I understand the question.
I think she's saying the value of the word director.
Right.
I think you have directors that report directly to you. And to have this, if the sustainability director is going to report to you, great.
Right.
But having a director of sustainability report to the director of public works or director of planning or finance director does not seem appropriate to me. And I think titles matter in town government.
Yeah, I do too, but we have other titles we have other titles that have the same thing, and so my objection isn't to this, is to picking out one small thing and leaving the rest there, when we're gonna redo all of this soon, in a couple months. And so potentially many titles within the organization are gonna get redone.
There's like 2 issues, right? One is there are other directors who probably care about their title because they do important jobs and they report directly to you. 2 is you give somebody a director title, it's not insignificant to then take that away. Like, that's a big deal. People care about their titles because they have meaning, because words have meaning. Like, for all the reasons that you're talking about reorganizing everything, it's bizarre to post something that you plan then to change, unless you don't plan to change it, which is another conversation, I guess. It's just confusing to almost deliberately use the wrong word. Unless it is the right word. Like, who are they reporting to? It seems like the job classification suggests something different. And then they're supposed to be reporting to Rob. Right?
Sorry, was that a question?
So I think what I'm hearing is you're going to redo it. So if you're going to have lots of directors, you're going to flood the titles with directors, then stick with director. If you're going to reclassify as coordinator or something different, just go with that now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure because we haven't gotten to that point in the process yet, and that's what I'm pushing back on, is that we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. We looked at the coordinator title, and that was totally fine. I don't have an objection to that. It's the sort of process that I'm objecting to right now. not title. So the reason we didn't want to go with a coordinator title was to ensure that we were continuing the town's commitment and perception of commitment to sustainability. That was the main reason. We've got a whole bunch of mix-ups and titles in different departments that we're slowly working on reorganizing. Again, there's going to potentially be employees who we currently have whose titles are going to change. So, you know, we should all be prepared for that, those sort of decisions. And again, it's not an objection to the coordinator title, it's an objection to sort of this process.
Well, you've asked us to reclassify a position that's currently half-time, and it was for a very different type of service than we're getting. It was, you know, a job that was created to help us get the community Power Coalition moving forward with a certain job skill. You've just explained to us that this is a substantially different job description to meet the needs, full-time needs of our sustainability initiative, which is awesome. It's a full-time position. But it does not feel correct in giving this position description the title of director, in my opinion.
I mean, I'm just trying to look at it from both sides. I mean, what is director reserved for then? I mean, I think the issue is not confusing this position with a department head. You know, we have the director of public. I'm just trying to think of what the other department head is.
Chiefs,
Director. We have chiefs.
Finance director, HR director. Is it HR director?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've got no problem using the objection. I mean, if all of you feel comfortable that using the title coordinator going forward doesn't diminish the town's commitment to sustainability, that was the main concern about retitling it at this stage. And then I've got no problem using and advertising the coordinator position. I mean, the select board's vote was to regrade the position tonight, so I can just change the title of the position. That's easy enough to do.
Alex, I understand you're looking, you know, with the study that's coming out and job descriptions and pay and step and
the grade and step.
Yeah, the grade and step. Thank you. I couldn't think of that word. We're going to be readdressing a lot, but I guess if this is the only one in front of us, I think the consensus is if we could change it and that's not a problem in your eyes, then let's do it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to do coordinator.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're moving on to town manager report.
Okay, so a couple updates. First is if you use Instagram, the town now has a Instagram, Hanover, New Hampshire. And so we do have a bunch, you know, Parks and Rec has one, police, we have different social media. We're going to get that all a little bit more organized, not in the super near future, but probably in the spring of next year. Just making sure we have the right policies in place and access controls and archiving and 91A training and all that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, at least we'll have this and we'll start using that. If people have ideas of things that can go on there, let me know. Good pictures of town would be great. I think we've said this a few times in our downtown meetings, we have a very Instagrammable town. So we should be sort of taking advantage of that. So next is some upcoming events. So we've got another Allen Street event that is being put on by Hanover Parks and Rec, and so that is October 27th and 28th. There is trick-or-treating on Friday, October 27th at 5:30. We've got a whole bunch of businesses participating in that. We've got pumpkin decorating the next day, Saturday the 28th, from 2 to 4. And then there is a costume party Saturday, October 28th from 7 to 9 p.m. So that's all on Allen Street. Same as last time, the street will be closed in the same way that we did before. Still North and Sawtooth will be participating in having outdoor dining outside. Definitely worth checking out. And then just a note that homecoming is coming up at Dartmouth, and there's going to be some major traffic issues, I think, as always happens. And so I am relaying that ahead of time, and we do have a little more, and we'll have something on our website, but I'm sure it will be not ideal for a day or two.
And
Well,
a bonfire too?
Bonfire's on Friday night,
Friday.
Yeah.
and the parade is what? I don't know.
8 o'clock.
Friday at 8 or so.
Friday after rush hour.
Right.
Okay.
So moving on to human resources and staffing updates. These are numbers for the last 2 months. We have had 5 employees start employment and 2 employees leave. And so Kevin Brayton at Public Works, Kelly Sano and Avery Brooks at Howe, Tracy Walsh in Clerk, in Admin Services, and Avery Crotty in Human Resources. So welcome to everybody.
Yay.
And you know, kudos to Tracy for sticking out a long select board meeting just a week into the job. So she's still here, so that's a big plus. We are now getting to the point of wrapping up our retention and recruitment study, which you've been hearing me talk about for the last 6 or 7 months. This is the last month of meetings, and we're talking about how to sustain employee engagement going forward. And we are beginning to evaluate some of the needs and ideas that have come out from that. We have a very long, sort of a half-day meeting with department heads on Thursday of this week with our consultants from UMass. And then, of course, on November 6th, we have hopefully, I sent the email around about the non-public before the public session at 5 o'clock. So we intend on having a 2-hour non-public on November 6th, which is going to be where we will discuss very preliminary ideas that relate to collective bargaining negotiations, and that will flow into budgeting and everything else. And so that will be, and then once we get the buy-in and okay from the select board on different things, once we'll get into sort of mid-November, we'll start working with the unions on the numbers and talking to our staff more broadly and starting to plug all that stuff into the budget, into the budgeting process at least. So,
Alex, are you going to share, after all of these hundreds of weeks of conversations, are you going to share any like rough drafts of all the ideas that town employees have given you? I just be curious about the depths of their.
It's fascinating. Yeah,
I'm sure it is.
We have a lot. It's sort of a challenge of organizing things.
Mm-hmm.
We have all the notes from all the meetings, and we're kind of putting together. There'll probably be a few different deliverables from that. There'll be the sort of like full report, which will have a lot of stuff in it. And there'll be some summary stuff as well that would just, distill down some of the ideas into some of the higher priorities. But there's a lot, and we had some pretty great conversations, and people were very open and honest and constructive, but lots of good ideas. And what was really nice, I'll just say as a side note, is being in Austin at the ICMA conference a couple weeks ago. You have about 6,000 local government managers and professionals, and a lot of the sessions about human resources stuff are all stuff that are coming out of these meetings and that we're starting to talk about doing, which is just kind of nice to see people doing the presentation. We're like, hey, that's the idea that we're thinking about.
How common it is.
Yeah, so that's kind of nice. Validating in some ways. The fire chief search is ongoing, so that job posting is live. That's obviously a big one. That is coming up soon, and you can find that on our website.
Do we have a consultant, a search firm?
Nope, we're doing that one internally. Yeah.
Okay. Is that consistent with prior practice for positions like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think with the amount of money out the door for the study, that's just not something, we just don't have the budget for it, even if we wanted to. But I think we feel pretty good about doing that in-house, and I think, there are certain third-party services, like as far as where we post the jobs, that are helpful, but we're gonna have a lot of these in the next 3 to 5 years, and we're gonna be spending a lot of money on consultants if we can't do these in-house. So especially as today I ran through another time a list of every single employee basically as we're drafting up some of the different proposals for things, and one of the columns is the number of years in, and I'm just 24, 19, 27, 30, 40, 20. Okay, this is a very longevity heavy organization, which is great. But yeah, we're going to have a lot of these in the next 5 years. And another human resources note, 2 cool employee recognitions that I wanted to make sure to mention. So and I won't read all the detail here potentially. But one was for the Hanover Fire Department, and this was an award, a unit citation award, and along with our crews responded to a call of a vehicle in the river. This was in January 23rd. And I have to read the description because it's great. It was a cold, windy, snowy night, and the car had gone off the road down a 30-foot embankment and into the river. The vehicle floated for about 100 feet down the river before becoming hung up on some rocks in swift water. The driver was able to get out of the car and was sitting on the roof. Hanover members donned swiftwater water suits, deployed our small inflatable boat just upriver, and paddled to the area of the car. Because of the current of the river and the river bank, the Lebanon and Hartford Fire Department set up a rope system that lowered the Hanover crew into the swift water to the car. They put the victim in a life jacket, pulled them up onto the boat, and back up onto the bank. So, we do a lot of water rescue work in Hanover, and this is, and a lot of trainings about it, and this is why. So that is a congrats to our former fire chief, Marty McMillan, deputy chief and current acting chief, Mike Gilbert, and Captain Jeer Linhan from firefighters Brandon Adams and Richard Kahan. And so this is a nice picture of them getting that award that was down in Concord. The next is an award, the Community Policing Award, to Hanover Police Corporal Mike Altericio. And this is a pretty cool program. And so this was in the fall of 2002, Altericio started a book patrol program, and this was to basically go into the schools and have police officers do sort of like reading events with students. Most of the books that they read in the program are sort of topics that are part of the HPD's sort of core values. The students enjoy it, and I know the officers enjoy it as well, getting in there. And so just want to congratulate him for getting the Community Policing Award as well. So just a nice recognition for some of our staff in the fire department, police department. All right, so moving on to the budget. So we are largely on track to the overall timeline that we talked about in the October 9th meeting, and November 6th is going to be an important meeting. That will be a check-in largely on the tax rate guidance, as we talked about a little bit earlier. Maybe in his updates, Kerry will do the update from the CIPC, the first CIPC meeting. We talked about the MS 535 and 434. Housing, I don't think I need to go into any more.
No.
I think we've done enough of that conversation for tonight. Are you sure? Okay.
Well, we have more to go.
We do have some more to go, yes. Downtown Hanover, we had another monthly meeting. We had a couple new members of managers that are coming into different businesses. So there's a couple new people there, which was fun. Our group also worked with the Upper Valley Business Alliance, and we won a $5,000 grant together to help pay for the tourism website that we recently set up thanks to some Dartmouth students, and that is explorehanovernh.org. And so that $5,000 will help pay for some of that, and will also pay for some other marketing activities that we're going to do alongside the UVBA. And the big sort of topic in that group right now is identifying a sustainable funding and kind of membership mechanism for downtown Hanover. It's been sort of a loose group of misfits so far. But we want to make that a little bit more formal and sustainable into the future. And so that is probably one of the main topics being discussed right now, which are what are the different statutory options available for doing that. We've gotten some information from other communities in New Hampshire, and there's a smaller group of property owners and business owners who are sort of meeting to work on that. So the hope is that we have some ideas or proposals for the select board probably in January of next year. That's it.
Wonderful, thank you. Select board reports, Joanna.
Nothing to report.
The Conservation Commission met.
Last Thursday, Wednesday.
Thank you. I don't even know what week it is anymore. It was it was actually the first time I managed to attend it, and it's a very well-run committee. Rob, of course, makes it go smoothly. And I'm trying to figure out what I need to report out, Rob.
They recommended the transfer of the 2 easements from.
Yep, that's right there. Transfer the 2 easements to the Lebanon Conservation Commission. That's going to come to the Select Board sometime pretty soon.
Probably November, yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. There were a lot of other topics. We filled up the 2 hours very well.
2 hours? It's not
2 hours. No, but they keep to it. It's not like our meeting.
Says the chair.
Nancy.
Sustainability Hanover has a retreat the same day that we have our retreat. So I'm gonna be.
Wednesday's a
You're gonna
busy
be
day.
I'm gonna be busy, yes.
Which is also the same day as the master plan open house.
Right.
Correct, yes.
Which we have a little bit of time to attend afterward, hopefully.
Yeah.
Carrie?
Capital Improvement Program Committee got together Friday at 11 o'clock, met for about an hour and 10 minutes, so we had a little bit over our allotted time. Elected John Dolan as our chair, Jenny as our vice chair. I should really let you be talking about this, but Nico as our secretary. So great committee, great discussion, I thought. Anything to add?
Just getting off the ground, right?
Yeah.
And
How-
Ellen was helpful in providing like fund information and.
How regularly is that committee going to meet?
We are going to meet Fridays at 10. That's what we had decided seemed to be a good time for folks. And we're going to keep meeting each week to get it going because we realize that January 8th, we need to have a draft recommendation to the Select Board so that on January 22nd, 2 weeks later, we can have a final because Alex, you need the CIP in January and we need to preview it. So January 8th, the last 2 weeks of December aren't good, so we have Thanksgiving, so all of a sudden we have like five or 6 weeks to get this done. It's going to be a very quick process.
Thank you. Jenny, anything else?
Yeah, we just have a walk and roll coming up on Sunday, October 29th at noon in the Dresden neighborhood. It's a costume event, but not a trick-or-treat event. The cider parade, Mr. Bill's unicycle should be fun. And then I think like the other big stuff we discussed mostly last time. But we had a decision that we really want to pursue that Verona path, just because that was always left up in the air. So maybe, I'm not sure what the right path is. Our committee is very much in favor of having it be a multi-use path, but we know that that's more expensive, but we don't know how much more expensive, instead of a sidewalk, if it's going to connect to the Girl Brook path. So I guess our recommendation is, if it's feasible, it should probably be a wider path to meet the other wider path. But we don't know what that cost is.
There were funds for that, right?
There were funds for the sidewalk. For the Girl Brook path, yes, the $350,000 from Custer.
Okay.
And for the sidewalk, there's $30K.
Oh.
Yeah.
Big guns.
It's just a little segment to get out to Wheel Up. Yeah, so that was a big thing.
Thank you. There's been a request for non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91A:3, Roman numeral 2, A, B, D, E, L, and I'm sure that's an I, although it looks like a word.
Joanna Wickham, yes.
Athos Gracias, yes.
Nancy Carter, yes.
Eric Callahan, yes.
Thank you.
Chamberlain, yes.
Thanks, Alan. Welcome, Tracy.